Chapter 1196. Kneel down and apologize. Mu Qing's eyes suddenly spat out a thick flame of anger. Apologizing was already his limit. How dare he ask him to kneel down? This was too much. Don't be so shameless. With a roar, his aura erupted and he threw a punch at Qin Feiyang. You're the one who's being shameless. Qin Feiyang suddenly stood up and grabbed Mu Qing's fist. His eyes were full of coldness. At the same time, Yan Wei and Lu Hong also immediately put down what they were doing and rushed to Qin Feiyang's side, looking at Mu Qing coldly. Let go of me. Mu Qing shouted angrily and tried to break free. But Qin Feiyang's strength was so great that he couldn't move at all. Moreover, as Qin Feiyang's strength continued to increase, his fist began to break and blood gushed out. The severe pain made his face contort, and Qin Feiyang's cold eyes made him feel even more desperate. Suddenly, with a crisp crack, Mu Qing couldn't help but howl miserably. His fist was crushed into pieces. But Qin Feiyang still didn't let go. I beg you, can you let go of me? Mu Qing was scared and begged bitterly. Qin Feiyang smiled sarcastically, and let go of his hand, and returned to the stone bench. Lu Hong also took out a handkerchief and handed it to Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang took the handkerchief and wiped the blood off his hand. He looked up at Mu Qing and said lightly, if it weren't for Lu Xingqian, you would be lying on the ground as a corpse now. Mu Qing's eyes trembled. Cut the crap and show me your sincerity. Otherwise, even if Lu Xingqian saves you today, I will do everything I can to kill you. Qin Feiyang said. Upon hearing this, Mu Qing could not help but feel a chill run down her spine. After knowing each other for so many years, how could he not understand Qin Feiyang's character? If he said it, he would definitely be able to do it. Moreover, Qin Feiyang's methods were well known to the world. Towards his enemies, there was no mercy in his eyes, only unscrupulous means. Once she was targeted by him, the consequences would be unimaginable. Even if he had been hiding at home or by Lu Xingqian's side, Qin Feiyang would have found an opportunity to kill him. Fear drowned him. He couldn't help but kneel on the ground, lowered his head and said, I'm sorry. Qin Feiyang smiled disdainfully. He looked at Lu Xingqian and said, your Mu Jia's descendant is nothing more than this. Lu Xingqian frowned. He glanced at Mu Qing and then looked at Qin Feiyang. He smiled faintly and said, compared to you, he is indeed much worse. I don't like to hear flattery. I only hope that when I'm in danger in the future, you won't hide behind my back and stab me in the back. Qin Feiyang said. Lu Xingqian smiled and said, I really can't guarantee this, but during the period of our cooperation, I will definitely not do that. I hope so. Take him away. Qin Feiyang said. He could not really trust Lu Xingqian without reservation. Because he still remembered Uncle Yuan's words, there was no knowing what was in a person's heart. Goodbye. Lu Xingqian stood up, cupped his hands, smiled, and opened the portal. Mu Qing quivered and came back to her senses. She hurriedly transmitted her voice. My lord, there's still the gate of time and space. Do you think he will return the gate of time and space to you? Lu Xingqian glanced at Mu Qing and entered the portal without looking back. Mu Qing glanced at Qin Feiyang and hurriedly followed. When the portal dissipated, Yan Wei sighed and said, this person is really unfathomable. Yes. He can still keep calm after humiliating Mu Qing like this. Just this temperament alone is enough to scare people. Lu Hong nodded. I deliberately humiliated Mu Qing. I just wanted to see Lu Xingqian's attitude. But the result disappointed me greatly. I can't figure out what he is thinking at all. Qin Feiyang rubbed his forehead. The current Lu Xingqian was far from the Lu Xingqian of the past. This was a strong opponent. He had to treat him seriously. He took out the image crystal. Buzz. Soon. Old Man Qin's figure appeared. Qin Feiyang said, there's something I want to tell you. Old Man Qin's expression was solemn as he said, it just so happens that this old man has something to tell you as well. Qin Feiyang was slightly taken aback and said, you go first. Elder Qin said, you go first. Qin Feiyang said, Lu Xingqian has returned to the temple. Don't trouble him. You let him go? Elder Qin raised his eyebrows. Yes. Qin Feiyang nodded. Why? Elder Qin was puzzled. Qin Feiyang said, I still need him to help me investigate some things. And currently he and I are in a cooperative relationship. Elder Qin was furious and shouted, "Didn't you promise me that you won't betray the great Qin Empire?" Qin Feiyang said, "Don't overreact, okay? I'm just cooperating with him for a short time. We're both taking what we need." "Really?" Elder Qin looked at him doubtfully. Qin Feiyang said, "I swear in the name of my ancestors." "That's good." Elder Qin breathed a sigh of relief. Mu Tianyang was already difficult to deal with. If Qin Feiyang was added, then the great Qin Empire was really in danger. "What do you want to say to me?" Qin Feiyang asked. Elder Qin said, "Before we parted in the pagoda, didn't I tell you not to mess around in the imperial capital?" Qin Feiyang nodded. "Then why did you run to the first district and alarm the imperial preceptor?" Elder Qin said angrily. "So it's because of this." Qin Feiyang suddenly understood and said with a smile, "At that time, I was chasing after one of Mu Tianyang's lackeys." "Who?" Elder Qin was surprised. Qin Feiyang said, "The person who was beaten to death by everyone in the first district." "Then you could have informed me. With me taking action, there wouldn't have been such a big commotion." Elder Qin was annoyed. Qin Feiyang said, "He was just a one-star combat emperor. I could have killed him without anyone knowing. Then why did you make such a big commotion?" Elder Qin was puzzled. Blood for blood. It would be too easy for him to kill him directly. Qin Feiyang snorted coldly. "So you have a personal grudge with him. But don't mess around like this next time," Elder Qin said helplessly. At that time, when he received the news that Qin Feiyang had appeared in the first district, he was greatly frightened, because no one knew better than him how terrifying the imperial capital was. "There won't be a next time." Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. "Okay, I will be going to the spirit state tomorrow morning. Take care of yourself," Elder Qin reminded. Qin Feiyang nodded. Elder Qin was about to turn off the image crystal when Qin Feiyang suddenly thought of something and quickly said, "Wait. What's wrong?" Elder Qin was suspicious. Qin Feiyang asked, "Do you know where my grandfather's home is?" Elder Qin's pupils shrank. "Why are you asking this?" Qin Feiyang sighed. "So many years have passed. I don't know how he is doing. I want to visit him." Although he had seen his grandfather when he was young, he had no impression of him now. Elder Qin shook his head. "Actually, I don't know where your grandfather's home is." And Qin Feiyang was stunned. Was there a mistake? In any case, old Qin had stayed in the imperial palace for so many years. How could he not even know where the Lu clan was? The Lu family was his grandfather's family. Old man Qin said, "This old man really didn't lie to you about this matter. The Lu family is a hidden family, and has always been very low-key. The disciples of the family have never walked outside. Other than your parents, I don't think anyone knows where they are." "Is it that mysterious?" Qin Feiyang frowned. "Is there anything else?" Elder Qin asked. Qin Feiyang shook his head. Old man Qin's illusionary figure immediately disappeared. Qin Feiyang also put away the image crystal, lowered his head and fell into deep thought. All these years he had been ignoring the Lu family. Who would have thought that after asking around, they were so mysterious? Lu Hong said, "Why don't we go ask Auntie?" "Forget it. If Mother was willing to tell me, she would have told me." Qin Feiyang shook his head. Lu Hong asked, "Then what's your next plan?" Qin Feiyang pondered for a while. "Wait for the miracle of the forgotten continent to open. But before that, there is one thing to do." "What is it?" Lu Hong was suspicious. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed, looked at Yan Wei and said, "Go to the imperial city now. No matter what, you have to sneak into the inner court and gain the trust of the imperial tutor. Also, don't let anyone know about this, including Lu Xingqian and Elder Qin." "Understood." Yan Wei nodded. Lu Hong looked at Yan Wei, then looked at Qin Feiyang and said, "Isn't this a bit too risky?" Qin Feiyang's intention was obvious. He wanted Yan Wei to hide beside the imperial tutor, so that he could know the whereabouts of the imperial tutor. But the imperial tutor was not a fool. If he found out something, wouldn't Yan Wei be doomed? "It's fine. I'm still confident about this." Yan Wei smiled confidently, then thought for a while and said, Even if my identity is exposed, I'll leave first. But you can't be careless, Lu Hong said. Don't worry. Yan Wei smiled and opened a teleportation gate. He turned around and walked in. Lu Hong looked at Yan Wei's back, then looked at Qin Feiyang and said, I still don't think it's right. The imperial tutor is not Fu Anshan. With old Yan's scheming and methods, how can he beat him? I can only say that you underestimate old Yan. Qin Feiyang shook his head and smiled. If he did not have confidence in old Yan, would he let Yan Wei go? Definitely not. Lu Hong pursed her lips and turned around to continue busying herself. Qin Feiyang turned and walked to the edge of the cliff. He lowered his head and pondered for a while, then sat cross-legged on the ground and closed his eyes to cultivate. At the same time, in an extremely distant place in the Grand Qin Empire, there was a vast mountain range with overlapping peaks that rose and fell continuously. In the mountains, the vegetation was lush and ferocious beasts were everywhere. At the foot of one of the giant peaks, there was a village. The village covered an area of about half a mile, and there were thousands of families gathered. Those houses were all built with very ordinary wood. Around the village, there were large tracts of rice fields, vegetable gardens, pastures, and so on. The atmosphere in the village was also very harmonious. The old people gathered together in twos and threes, basking in the sun, drinking tea and chatting. The children were playing around in the mud, their laughter lingering in the air. The young and strong people were busy in the rice fields and pastures. Everyone's face was filled with a simple smile. In short. Chapter 1197. Near the village. In front of a river, an old man dressed in sackcloth sat by the river, fishing quietly. His body was bent, and he had no aura. He was like an ordinary old man, without any sense of danger. Beside the old man sat a dark-skinned young man. The young man had a dignified appearance, about 1.8 meters tall. His upper body was exposed, and he only wore a pair of large pants made of animal skin. He was also fishing with a fishing rod, but his face was full of impatience. Seeing the motionless float on the river, the young man couldn't help but say angrily, Second Grandpa, I can accompany you fishing, but can't we find a place with fish? Look, it's been a few hours, but the float hasn't moved at all. How can we fish? The sackcloth old man smiled. Young man, don't be impatient. Fishing is about. Before the old man could finish, the young man waved his hand impatiently and said, all right. Don't talk to me about your great principles. I don't understand. Just tell me directly. How long do you want me to sit with you? The old man said, I'm cultivating your patience, understand? The young man pouted. My patience is about to reach its limit. The old man smiled helplessly and asked, then do you know why I kept you in the village all these years and didn't let you go out to explore? Why? The young man didn't understand. It's because you can't stay calm. People who can't stay calm often get into big trouble. The old man said, stop bullshitting. It's clearly because you're too bored and kept me in the village to accompany you. Second Grandpa, such a promising young man with a bright future was delayed by you. Don't you feel guilty? The young man said unhappily. The old man's face couldn't help but darken. Don't be unhappy. Last time, you said yourself that you wanted me to take that artifact to the Forgotten Continent to find Qin Feiyang and help him take care of him. But how long has it been? I'm still here fishing with you. Don't I feel bad? The young man was like a resentful woman, complaining nonstop. I said to let you go to the Forgotten Continent, but I didn't say to let you go immediately. You're the one who's impatient. The old man said indifferently. The young man snorted and said, then you'd better not let me go for the rest of my life. At least I'll be free. You really don't know what to do. The old man shook his head weakly. Whoosh. At this moment, accompanied by the sound of something breaking through the air, a burly man cut through the sky and flew towards the village. This person was also topless. His muscles were well developed, and his skin was very dark, as if it was smeared with charcoal. Whoosh. Soon. The big man landed beside the old man and the young man. The young man immediately said in dissatisfaction, Uncle Black, you're not being nice. Why didn't you call me along when you went to have fun? The burly man's face was dark to begin with. Upon hearing the young man's words, his face darkened even more. Can't you stop talking? The old man gave him a knock on the head. He looked up at the burly man and smiled. You're back. The burly man nodded. The old man asked, any news? Yes. Feiyang is back. The burly man said. The young man was slightly taken aback. He stood up and said, why is he here again? Could it be that he can't survive in the forgotten continent anymore? The burly man rolled his eyes at him and looked at the old man. Not long ago, in order to kill someone named Zhang Jin, he even caused a big scene in the first district. It's indeed his style. The old man shook his head and laughed. He asked curiously, why did he want to kill Zhang Jin? This Zhang Jin is Mu Tianyang's lackey. The biggest reason is that the people of Iron Ox Town died because of Zhang Jin. In addition, he also killed many law enforcers of the inner court in the demonic Dragon Mountain in He province. The burly man laughed. That's right. The old man nodded and was very pleased. The young man frowned and said, Uncle Black, how do you know so much? You're not happy that I said you're too young. Back then, when Qin Feiyang left the capital, your second grandpa asked me to go to the Butterfly Valley in the spiritual state to keep an eye on him. As soon as he came back, I knew about it and have been secretly watching him. The burly man said. Second grandpa, you're too much. You asked Uncle Black to go but not me. The young man immediately looked at the old man with dissatisfaction. It was worth mentioning that neither the young man nor the old man were surprised when they heard about Mu Tianyang. The old man rolled his eyes at the young man and looked at the burly man. Where is he now? Black Dragon Swamp. The burly man said. After a moment of thought he added, but he mentioned Grandpa. What did he say? The old man was suspicious. The burly man said, he asked Elder Qin where we live and said that he wanted to visit Grandpa. Sigh. The old man sighed deeply and turned to look at the young man. Didn't you want to go out and have fun? Now that the opportunity is here, go and find him. Really? The young man immediately threw away the fishing rod and asked excitedly. Yes. The old man nodded. The young man stretched out his hand in front of the burly man and said, then give me the divine artifact. I know it must be in your hands. Otherwise, you'll go to the spiritual state. The burly man looked at the old man. The old man chuckled. Don't even think about the divine artifact. The young man's expression froze and he said angrily, Second grandpa, you can't be like this. Didn't you agree? The old man said. That was before Feiyang came back. Now that he's back, do you still need the divine artifact? I don't care. If you don't give it to me, I won't go. The young man crossed his arms and turned his head to the side, extremely unhappy. You're still throwing a tantrum? If you don't want to go, then don't go. No one is forcing you. Xiaohei, go and call Lu Jiajing here. The old man looked at the burly man and said. Okay. The burly man nodded. Wait. The young man hurriedly grabbed the burly man and looked at the old man. Why are you calling my brother here? Didn't you say that you won't go? Then I'll definitely let someone else go. Your brother is stronger than you, smarter than you, and calmer than you. In short, he's better than you in every aspect. With him helping Feiyang, I'll have less to worry about. The old man said. The young man pursed his lips and said, Anyway, I don't agree. He's in seclusion now. You guys are not allowed to disturb him. Then what should we do? Someone has to go. After all, Feiyang is our family. We can't just stand by and watch, right? Sigh, my head hurts. The old man rubbed his forehead with a frustrated expression. The young man rolled his eyes and said, All right, stop acting. I'll go, okay? Hee hee. The old man immediately beamed with joy. Hypocrite. The young man secretly despised him. The old man's expression turned solemn as he looked at the young man and said, Zheng, before you go, I have to solemnly remind you not to be willful. The outside world is different from here. It's full of danger. If you're not careful, you'll lose your life. That's more fun. The young man's lips curled into a cynical smile. The old man's face darkened immediately. The young man hurriedly waved his hands and said, Okay. I'll remember it. I promise I won't act recklessly. That's more like it. The old man smiled and continued. Also, don't let Feiyang know your identity for now. The young man nodded and asked, anything else? The old man waved his hand and said, no, get lost. You're annoying. Don't speak too soon. Don't miss me so much that you'll cry. The young man smiled slyly and turned into a stream of light, disappearing into the horizon rapidly. Rascal. The old man scolded with a smile and looked at the back view of the young man with doting eyes. The burly man shook his head and smiled. He looked at the old man and said, is it appropriate to let Jing'er go? Jing'er is indeed more suitable than him. However, he's at a critical juncture of his seclusion and can't be disturbed. As for Jing'er, he's actually not bad. It's just that he's a little mischievous. Take it as a chance for him to train. The old man smiled. The burly man nodded. Black Dragon Pool. Everything was normal. Bang. However, all of a sudden, a young man with a bare upper body descended above the Black Dragon Pool and broke the tranquility. At the peak of the mountain, Lu Hong was busy tending to the garden. When she sensed the aura of the young man, she was shocked and looked up. Immediately, she frowned. Who was this person? Why hadn't she seen him before? The young man soon noticed Lu Hong on the mountain peak. His eyes flashed and he took a step forward. He landed opposite Lu Hong and asked curiously, little beauty, what are you doing here in the wilderness? Aren't you afraid of bumping into bad guys? Are you the bad guy you're talking about? Lu Hong looked at him warily. That was because she realized that she could not see through his cultivation. I'm so handsome. How could it be me? The young man touched his chin with a smug look. Then he glanced at the mountain peak and said, don't tell me you're still planning to settle down here? What does it have to do with you? Who exactly are you? Lu Hong furrowed her brows. This person did not seem to have any ill intentions. Why did he come to the Black Dragon Pool then? Did he barge in unintentionally? Or was it intentional? The young man chuckled. Of course it has to do with me, because this is my territory. Shouldn't you tell me in advance that you're going to settle down here, and see if I'll allow it? Are you looking for trouble? Lu Hong raised her brows. Do you still think you're in the right? Now, I order you to tear down that small wooden house immediately. Otherwise, don't blame me for being rude. The young man's nose was pointed to the sky and he was overbearing. Boom. However, before he could finish his words, a terrifying saint's aura emerged and rushed toward the young man with overwhelming force. The young man suddenly raised his head and looked to the left of the cliff. He saw a young man in white standing there. His eyes were as cold as a blade. It was Qin Feiyang. Attacking without a word. What a bad temper. The young man grumbled. Boom. A surge of saint's aura, which was not inferior to Qin Feiyang's, rushed out of his body and collided with Qin Feiyang's saint's aura. An 8-star battle saint. Qin Feiyang's pupils shrank and he quickly dispersed his saint's aura. It was not because he was afraid of this young man, but because if he fought with this young man here, everything that Lu Hong had set up would be destroyed in an instant. However, the young man did not stop. His saint's aura surged and rushed toward Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang's face turned cold. He waved his hand and forcibly dispersed that surge of saint's aura. Not bad. The young man was surprised and his eyes flickered. Chapter 1198. The young man was stunned. Someone actually dared to tell him to get lost? Interesting. He smiled playfully and flew into the sky with a monstrous aura. He hooked his finger at Qin Feiyang provocatively. However, Qin Feiyang ignored him. He glanced at him indifferently and retracted his gaze. Damn, I'm being ignored? The young man was annoyed. With a wave of his hand, his battle aura emerged and turned into a raging wave that roared toward the peak of the mountain. However, his target was not Qin Feiyang but Lu Hong. I've seen many people who are afraid of death but not many who are courting death, Qin Feiyang muttered. Suddenly, like a divine rainbow, he rushed to the front of the battle aura and threw a punch. With a loud bang, the battle aura was dispersed by his punch. However, he also retreated a few feet, and his arm was numb. Despite this, the young man was still shocked. One had to know. His cultivation level was one level higher than Qin Feiyang's. However, Qin Feiyang was able to scatter his battle qi with a single punch with only his body of flesh and blood. Furthermore, he was not injured at all. Was this guy's body made of iron? No matter who you are, don't think of leaving today. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed with murderous intent. Whoosh! He activated the phantom steps. In an instant, he appeared in front of the young man, and threw another punch. The young man was shocked. He quickly raised his arm and threw a punch. Bang! The two fists collided with a loud bang. A destructive airwave spread out in all directions with the two of them as the center. At the same time, both of them retreated a few feet, and their arms were sore. Monster! The young man swung his arms and looked at Qin Feiyang in disbelief. Not only was his body strong, but his strength was also extremely terrifying. This was the effect of eating the divine meat. Now Qin Feiyang's body was much tougher and stronger than before. If the young man was a 7-star battle saint like Qin Feiyang, that punch would be enough to kill him. The young man shouted. Show me your strength. That depends on whether you have the ability or not. Qin Feiyang took a step forward, the energy in his body surging. He felt unprecedentedly strong. Umph. The young man snorted coldly and charged forward without backing down. Rumble. Bang. Bang. The two of them madly collided in the void. Streams of destructive auras surged in all directions like surging tides. But, although the situation was intense, Lu Hong didn't give it a second glance. She buried her head and continued to take care of the garden. Because she had full confidence in Qin Feiyang. Although the young man's background was unknown and his cultivation was higher than Qin Feiyang's, she believed that as long as Qin Feiyang wanted to, he could kill this person at any time. He's so strong. In terms of physical strength, I'm no match for him at all. As the battle reached its climax, the young man became more and more alarmed. Blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. As for his two arms, the skin and flesh were already lacerated. Then he looked at Qin Feiyang. Although he was also injured, he was much better than the young man. He was like a human-shaped tyrannosaurus that didn't know fatigue and pain. The more he fought, the braver and fiercer he became. The young man was almost unable to withstand it. Rumble. Suddenly, taking advantage of the young man's confusion, Qin Feiyang seized the opportunity and slapped the young man's chest. Puff! The young man's blood splattered 3 feet. Like a meteorite, he smashed into a giant mountain in the distance. Rumble! That giant mountain collapsed on the spot, dust and smoke rising in all directions. Haha! Qin Feiyang, I've underestimated you in the past. If you think you can defeat me like this, you're gravely mistaken. Accompanied by wild laughter, the young man rushed out of the dust and smoke. His aura was like a rainbow. Above his head, there was a black moon floating in the air. The black moon was only the size of a palm, but it exuded a shocking aura. Come and try this move of mine. The young man grinned. The black moon trembled violently and suddenly swept toward Qin Feiyang with monstrous power. A perfect battle technique? Qin Feiyang muttered. Clang. 40 sword shadows appeared out of thin air. Are you kidding me? So many of them at once? Shouldn't you follow the routine and do it bit by bit? The young man, who was still proud of himself a moment ago, was so scared that his face turned pale. Who has the mood to play tricks with you? Qin Feiyang waved his hand, and the 40 sword shadows roared out in unison. Accompanied by a loud bang, the black moon instantly shattered. More than half of the sword shadows also collapsed, leaving only 6 sword shadows. However, these 6 sword shadows were enough to make the young man despair. This was because every sword shadow was equivalent to a perfect battle art. You can't play like this. The young man took to his heels and ran away in terror. However, the aura of the 6 sword shadows firmly locked onto him. No matter where he ran, the sword shadows would follow. Qin Feiyang's eyes surged with murderous intent. Although he had never seen this person before, only Lu Xingqian and Mu Qing knew that he was cultivating in the Black Dragon Pool. Therefore, he concluded that this person must be Lu Xingqian's lackey. He could not kill Lu Xingqian now. However, he would never show mercy to Lu Xingqian's lackeys, especially to this kind of arrogant person who came to cause trouble on his own accord. Haha. However, the young man suddenly laughed. Qin Feiyang frowned. How could he still laugh? The young man said without turning his head. A friendly reminder. Be careful of your surroundings. My surroundings? Qin Feiyang was taken aback. He quickly scanned the surroundings. Immediately, his pupils suddenly shrank. For black moons suddenly appeared in the void around him without any warning, as if they had appeared out of thin air. Moreover, these black moons were exactly the same in size and aura as the black moon that was shattered by the sword shadows. Boom! As soon as the 4 black moons appeared, they blasted Qin Feiyang's body. The terrifying lethality caused him fatal injuries in an instant. Not only was his body badly mutilated, but one of his arms was also shattered. Dragon blood poured down like a waterfall, soaking the sky. How is this possible? Hearing the commotion, Lu Hong looked up suspiciously and her face was full of disbelief. Qin Feiyang was injured? Clang. At the same time, the young man waved his hand and several more black moons appeared, crushing the 6 sword shadows. Then he crossed his arms and looked at Qin Feiyang proudly. How did you do it? Qin Feiyang took a healing pill and looked at the young man gloomily. My battle technique is called Phantom Moon. The black moon you saw at the beginning was just an illusion. The real black moon is hidden in the void. Moreover, Phantom Moon is similar to your Guthyuan sword technique. The number of black moons summoned will increase according to the cultivation level. Now I can summon 40 black moons. After the young man finished speaking, his body shook. Boom. At that moment, black moons the size of a palm constantly swept out from behind the young man and floated above his head. Every black moon exuded an astonishing ferocious aura. Qin Feiyang glanced at the black moons and his face turned solemn. He did not expect this person to have mastered such a terrifying battle technique. Watch carefully. The real phantom moon will begin now. The young man grinned and waved his hand. The black moons floating above his head disappeared from Qin Feiyang's sight in an instant. Even their auras disappeared. I don't believe that they will really disappear. Qin Feiyang opened his eyes wide and scanned the void, not letting go of any place. However, he could not see anything in the void. They really disappeared. Boom. Immediately after, a strong sense of crisis swept over him. Behind him, 2 black moons appeared out of thin air and blasted his back like lightning. Puff. He spat out a mouthful of blood and staggered forward. Before he could react, 2 more black moons appeared in front of him and blasted his chest. Next, left, right, below, above, black moons continued to appear and blasted his body. They were like ghosts hiding in the void. It was impossible to capture their traces, and it was impossible to guard against them. The intense pain made Qin Feiyang's face contort. He felt that his body was about to be torn apart. However, he was helpless. How is it? Is my illusionary moon worthy of your attention? The young man was even more proud. Qin Feiyang could not even take care of himself. How would he have the mood to care about him? Suddenly, an idea flashed in his mind. Boom. A monstrous battle intent roared out from his body. His eyes and long hair suddenly turned blood red. Battle formula. Once the battle formula was activated, the intense pain immediately disappeared, because the battle formula could make him forget pain. Moreover, it could make him have an extremely strong defense. It could also reduce half of the lethality, which was equivalent to ignoring these injuries. In short, once the battle formula was activated, he would be immortal among those of the same level, unless the other party also mastered the divine art. Although the young man's cultivation was higher than him by a small level, don't forget that his body had also fused with the fire of life. Therefore, these black moons could no longer cause any actual damage to him. Next, Qin Feiyang allowed those black moons to continuously bombard his body. He raised his head to look at the young man and said indifferently, "It's only SSO." Amazing. The young man looked at Qin Feiyang in shock. That gaze was as if he was looking at a monster. Now it's my turn. Qin Feiyang formed a seal with both hands. A mighty dragon aura immediately surged out. What are you doing? Don't tell me you're going to use the divine dragon technique. Let me tell you, that's shameless. The young man's eyes widened and hurriedly exclaimed. But Qin Feiyang turned a deaf ear to him. The purple gold dragon aura rolled out. A divine seal the size of a palm suddenly appeared between his hands, and a terrifying divine power instantly swept through the sky. Divine Dragon Seal. It's really the Divine Dragon formula. The young man panicked and hurriedly waved his hand. This is a misunderstanding. Listen to my explanation. Go to hell and explain to the King of Hell. Qin Feiyang smiled coldly and suddenly waved his hands. The Divine Dragon Seal broke through the air and instantly expanded to hundreds of feet. It was like a towering mountain, crashing toward the young man. This is going to be big. The young man was secretly annoyed. If he had known that this guy's temper was so bad, he would not have provoked him even if he was beaten to death. There's no other way. I can only use my true ability. Seeing that Qin Feiyang had no intention of stopping, the young man gritted his teeth, placed his hands in front of his chest, and quickly formed a seal. Waves of flaming battle chi surged wildly. Boom. The next moment, between his hands, a palm-sized square seal was condensed. As soon as the square seal appeared, a shocking divine might surged out in all directions like a tide. Divine might. It's actually a divine art. Chapter 1199. The square seal that the young man condensed was extremely similar to the Divine Dragon Seal. The only difference was that the Divine Dragon Seal was purplish gold in color with a purplish gold divine dragon at the bottom. The square seal was scarlet in color, and was shrouded in flames with a fire phoenix at the bottom. First stance of the Fire Phoenix art, Fire Phoenix Seal. The young man hollered. The square seal expanded with the wind as well and instantly grew to a few thousand feet, charging towards the Divine Dragon Seal with rumbling divine might. Boom. The two divine seals collided. An apocalyptic aura swept through the skies. The wind howled and the voids distorted. At the same time, snap! Accompanied by a deafening sound, the Fire Phoenix Seal shattered. The young man's body shuddered and blood gushed out of his mouth. Although the Divine Dragon Seal showed signs of shattering as well, its divine might was still present, and it continued to charge towards the young man. It was clear that, although the Fire Phoenix Seal was also a divine technique, it was still inferior to the Divine Dragon Seal. Indeed, the Fire Phoenix art can't compare to the Divine Dragon art. However, I can't admit defeat just like that. Second stance, Phoenix Cry. The young man's gaze darkened and with a roar, his battle chi rumbled. Screech. In an instant, a fire phoenix streaked through the skies. The fire phoenix spread its wings and roared into the skies, sending an invisible sound wave towards the Divine Dragon Seal. This Qin Feiyang was stunned. The second stance of the young man, Phoenix Cry, was identical to the second stance of the Divine Dragon art as well. How could there be such similar divine techniques in this world? Was it a coincidence? Snap. Against the impact of the sound wave, the Divine Dragon Seal finally shattered, turning into a rain of light that scattered through the skies. Hee hee. Qin Feiyang, how about we make a bet? If you win, I'll be your follower. If I win, you'll be my follower. The young man provoked. Qin Feiyang did not reply. With a wave of his hand, purplish gold dragon chi surged, and a purplish gold divine dragon appeared with a mighty dragon might. Roar. The divine dragon coiled in the skies and let out a loud dragon roar that reverberated through the skies. Immediately, a sound wave roared out and collided with the sound wave emitted by the fire phoenix. Poof. The young man immediately spat out a mouthful of blood, and his body staggered backward. The fiery phoenix above his head shattered on the spot. I'm not interested in you, but I am very interested in your deity incantation. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed. The sound waves roared, instantly drowning the young man. Ah! The young man immediately howled miserably. It was as if countless sharp blades were cutting into his body, causing blood and flesh to fly everywhere. Looks like I still underestimated the Divine Dragon technique. The young man panicked and shouted, "Stop! I surrender!" Qin Feiyang turned a deaf ear and asked, "Who are you? What are you here for?" The young man said, "I'm here to become sworn brothers with you." Become sworn brothers? Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows and snorted coldly. Even now, you still dare to fool me. You really don't know the difference between life and death. The young man said anxiously, "I'm not messing with you. I'm really here to become sworn brothers with you. Put away these sound waves and listen to my explanation. Qin Feiyang was indifferent. If you don't stop, I'm going to die. If I die, it will only be your loss. The young man was burning with anxiety and annoyance at the same time. Why did he come here to play with fire? Qin Feiyang stared at the young man, and suddenly waved his hand. The sound waves that trapped the young man instantly dissipated into nothingness. The young man hurriedly took out a healing pill and swallowed it. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed. The healing pill that the young man took out actually had 6 pill veins. Swish. He took a step in front of the young man and stretched out his hand. Seeing this, the young man's expression changed. Like a frightened rabbit, he retreated dozens of feet away and waved his hand. It's really a misunderstanding. I came with good intentions. I really didn't see your good intentions. Qin Feiyang's gaze was aggressive. The young man sighed helplessly and said, "Let me put it this way. I'm here to cooperate with you. You really are one of Lu Xingchen's people." Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed with a cold light. One of Lu Xingchen's people? The young man was stunned and puzzled. What do I have to do with him? Let me tell you, I don't like him at all. Qin Feiyang was surprised. How could he be so arrogant? He said, "Do you know who Lu Xingchen is?" "Of course I do. Isn't he just Mu Tianyang's doppelganger?" The young man said. Qin Feiyang frowned. He even knew this. What was the background of this person? Let me formally introduce myself. My name is Lu Zheng. I'm from a mysterious force. Lu Zheng said with a smile. Surnamed Lu? Qin Feiyang was surprised and asked, "Which mysterious force?" "It's not convenient to say. In short, the force behind me is very strong. Even you can't afford to offend it. So in the future, you'd better be polite to me," Lu Zheng said proudly. Surnamed Lu? Is he from Grandpa's family? Qin Feiyang muttered. Lu Zheng walked up to Qin Feiyang and said with a smile, "What do you think of my proposal?" "What proposal?" Qin Feiyang frowned. Lu Zheng said with a smile, "Become sworn brothers. I'm definitely older than you. In the future, you'll be my brother." "Get lost." Qin Feiyang's face darkened. Lu Zheng said with a smile, "Don't be so unreasonable. We're all young people. Let go." "You can go," Qin Feiyang said and turned to land on the top of the mountain. At first, he suspected that Lu Zheng might be from Grandpa's family, but this person obviously didn't want to talk about his identity, so he couldn't be sure. "Oh, don't be like this." Lu Zheng shamelessly followed and said, "Look, we're both people with divine arts, and we're all monstrous talents. You won't lose out if we become sworn brothers, right?" Qin Feiyang frowned and said without looking back, "You can be more narcissistic." "Is this narcissism?" "It's obviously the truth." As Lu Zheng said, he rushed in front of Qin Feiyang and said with a smile, "If you really don't want to become sworn brothers, then let's be friends." "Not interested." Qin Feiyang went to the edge of the cliff, sat cross-legged on the ground, and continued to cultivate with his eyes closed. This person's background was unknown, and his strength was unfathomable. His behavior was also strange. It was best to stay away from him. Seeing that Qin Feiyang was stubborn, Lu Zheng was annoyed. If it weren't for his second grandpa's repeated instructions, he wouldn't have bothered to show his warm face to the cold. Suddenly, he rolled his eyes and ran to Lu Hong's side. He smiled and said, "Miss, do you need any help?" "No." Lu Hong answered coldly, then lowered her head and got busy. "You have personality. I like it." Lu Zheng rubbed his chin and looked at Lu Hong's back, his eyes full of playfulness. "Miss, do you have a boyfriend? If you don't, do you think I can do it? I'm a very honest person. Usually, I blush when I see women. So, you definitely have a sense of security when we're together." Lu Zheng pestered her shamelessly. "Aren't you annoying?" Lu Hong raised her eyebrows. Look. After being with Qin Feiyang for so long, even your personality has become as cold as his. This is not good. Women are born gentle and cute. That's what makes them likable." Lu Zheng chuckled. "Shameless hooligan." Lu Hong glared at him, then turned and walked to the other side. Lu Zheng hurriedly followed with a solicitous look. Seeing that Lu Zheng was harassing Lu Hong again, Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows and shouted, "Leave immediately." "What? You even want to interfere with my pursuit of love? Moreover, Lu Hong isn't your servant girl. What right do you have to care so much?" Lu Zheng raised his head and looked at him with dissatisfaction. "What do you want to do?" Lu Hong glared at him angrily. Lu Zheng smiled and said, "Isn't it obvious? I fell in love with you at first sight, so I want to stay and pursue you until you agree." Lu Hong's pretty face couldn't help but blush, but the look in her eyes became fiercer. "Don't worry, I'm definitely not saying that I like you to get close to Qin Feiyang. I really like you. Listen, my heart is pounding." As Lu Zheng spoke, he really put his chest in front of Lu Hong. Lu Hong was about to go crazy. Qin Feiyang said, "Ignore him." Lu Hong took a deep breath, nodded to Qin Feiyang, and continued to busy herself. Lu Zheng continued to pester her. Qin Feiyang also looked at Lu Zheng silently. He wanted to see what this person wanted to do. Next, Lu Zheng didn't leave. He kept circling Lu Hong. It seemed that he really liked Lu Hong. But Lu Hong always looked at him coldly. She only felt annoyed. Time passed like this, day by day. Half a month later, boom. A powerful saintly aura suddenly erupted on the mountain peak. Lu Hong and Lu Zheng sat opposite each other at the coffee table beside the small wooden house. When they heard movement, they immediately turned to look at Qin Feiyang. They saw that Qin Feiyang's cultivation had already stepped into the 8-star battle saint realm. Lu Zheng retracted his gaze and looked at Lu Hong. He asked, "When did he break through to the 7-star battle saint realm?" Lu Hong glanced at him indifferently and said, "Half a month ago." "Half a month ago? Isn't that when I came here?" "Damn, breaking through a small realm in half a month. What kind of monster is this guy?" Lu Zheng looked at Qin Feiyang in disbelief. "Don't speak ill of him," Lu Hong said angrily. "Hee, it seems that you care about him a lot. But he doesn't seem to be interested in you. You should consider me. Look at me in terms of talent, I'm not much worse than him. In terms of handsomeness, I can completely crush him. Why aren't you moved at all?" Lu Zheng looked at her with a puzzled expression. Lu Hong rolled her eyes. After spending half a month with him, she realized that other than being a little narcissistic and arrogant, this person did not have any ill intentions. So her attitude was not as cold as before. However, she did not dare to let her guard down. After all, one could not judge a book by its cover. At the same time, Qin Feiyang opened his eyes, withdrew his saintly aura, and turned to look at Lu Zheng. "Hi." Lu Zheng waved his hand in greeting. Qin Feiyang ignored him directly. He had already gotten used to this person's shamelessness these days. He retracted his gaze and scanned the mountains below. There was a faint trace of excitement in his eyes. He had finally become an 8-star battle saint. He could take the 9-turn dragon blood pill now. As long as he took the 9-turn dragon blood pill, his cultivation would instantly break through a small realm and become a 9-star battle saint. He would only be one step away from becoming a battle emperor. Once his cultivation broke through to the battle emperor level, he would be able to do many things, such as the 6-word divine formula and the alchemy scripture. The return formula, battle formula, and kill formula each had a heaven-defying power. The 4th divine formula would definitely not be weak either. In other words, he would have another trump card in his hands at that time. Chapter 1200. Phew. Qin Feiyang let out a long breath and suppressed his excitement. He entered the ancient castle, walked to the altar, and started refining pills. He had refined the 9 reincarnation dragon blood pill many times. Thus he was able to refine 2 pills with ease. Wolf King opened his eyes and said helplessly, "Little Qinzi, your cultivation speed is really enviable." Fatso, Viper, 2-winged snow eagle, and the others nodded in agreement. In terms of effort, they worked harder than Qin Feiyang. That was because they cultivated in seclusion in the ancient castle every day. However, the gap between them did not shrink. Instead, it grew bigger and bigger. Viper and Dan Wangkai felt it the most. Back in Qinghai, one of them was an 8-star battle saint while the other was a 9-star battle saint. At that time, Qin Feiyang's cultivation was only a 3-star battle saint. How long had it been? He had already broken through to an 8-star battle saint. After taking the 9 reincarnation dragon blood pill, it would not take long for him to catch up with them. Everyone felt a lot of pressure. Qin Feiyang glanced at them one by one and shook his head with a smile. There is motivation when there is pressure. The pangolin said, "This is not motivation, it's helplessness." Everyone nodded their heads in agreement. When they were with this guy, they had to be prepared to be attacked at any time. Qin Feiyang shook his head and laughed. He sat cross-legged on the ground and focused for a moment before taking a 9 reincarnation dragon blood pill. Fatso said, "Wait, you just left Lu Hong alone outside. Aren't you afraid that Lu Zheng will force himself on her? Do you think he will dare?" Qin Feiyang asked. "Who knows?" Fatso pursed his lips. Qin Feiyang said, "I'll tell you the truth. His liking of Lu Hong is just an excuse. His real goal is to get close to me." "Why would he do that? What's his goal?" Fatso frowned. "Who knows? But as long as it's not Lu Xingchen's people, it's fine." After Qin Feiyang finished speaking, he calmed down and focused on breaking through to the next realm. The energy of the 9 revolutions dragon blood pill was extremely majestic, and it continuously surged into his limbs and bones. He could clearly sense that both his physical body and his essence, qi, and spirit were improving bit by bit. An unknown amount of time passed. Boom. All of a sudden, his aura burst out uncontrollably. Moreover, it was rising at an astonishing speed. Fatso sneakily glanced at Qin Feiyang, then looked at Wolf King, Viper, and the others. With a sinister smile, he said, "How about we make a bet?" "What kind of bet?" Everyone looked at him suspiciously. Fatso said, "Let's bet on whether Boss can succeed in one try." "Sure. I bet all my money that he can do it in one go." Without another word, Wolf King took out the Qiankuan bag in his Qi and threw it on the ground. "I also believe that Qin Feiyang can succeed in one try." "Me too." Winged Snow Eagle, Black Dragon Snake, Ghost Snake Emperor, and Flood Dragon also placed their bets. Finally, they were all betting on Qin Feiyang to succeed in one try. Only Fatso had not placed his bet yet. He hesitated. Originally, he also wanted to bet on Qin Feiyang succeeding in one try, but now that everyone had placed their bets, wouldn't it be meaningless if he also placed his bet? Finally, he gritted his teeth, took out the Qiankuan bag, pressed it on the ground, and said, "Fat Lord bet that he will need to take at least 2 9 revolutions dragon blood pills to succeed." "Brat, just you wait and cry." That's right, with Qin Feiyang's potential, how could he need 2 9 revolutions dragon blood pills? Everyone laughed in schadenfreude. Hey, does this 9 revolutions dragon blood pills success in one try have anything to do with his potential? Fatso coldly snorted. He didn't believe it. Everyone was paying close attention to Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang's aura was getting stronger and stronger, and he was about to reach the peak of the 8-star battle saint realm. The smile on Viper and the rest's faces became even wider. If nothing went wrong, he would definitely succeed in one try. This was because Viper and Dan Wangkai had both taken the 9 revolutions dragon blood pill before, so they knew how huge the energy of the 9 revolutions dragon blood pill was. Even if it had nothing to do with his potential, Qin Feiyang would definitely be able to break through. Boom. Finally, Qin Feiyang's aura had reached the peak of the 8-star battle saint realm. He was about to break through the shackles and become a 9-star battle saint, but suddenly, his aura began to weaken. What's going on? Wolf King, Viper, and the rest widened their eyes in shock. Haha. Needless to say, there must be insufficient energy. Fatso laughed out loud. This was really a glimmer of hope at the end of the tunnel. This shouldn't be. If I can break through in one try, why can't he? Dan Wangkai said with a long face. You have neglected a very serious problem. You have been a 9-star battle saint for a long time, so the probability of success in one try is much higher. Boss has just broken through to the 8-star battle saint realm, and hasn't stabilized yet. How can he succeed in one try? Fatty smiled proudly, his face blossoming with joy. Dan Wangkai immediately collapsed to the ground. Just as Fatso was speaking, Qin Feiyang took the second 9 revolutions dragon blood pill, and majestic energy surged through his limbs and bones again. Boom. He broke through the shackles in one go and became a 9-star battle saint. I lost my entire fortune, Viper cried out in sorrow. As one of the Azure Sea's 10 heroes, he definitely had a lot of wealth, such as medicinal herbs, battle arts, and so on. The reason why he bet everything was because he never thought that he would lose. Wolf King and the rest of the beasts were also dejected. Haha, I've earned big. Fatso, on the other hand, laughed loudly and beamed with joy. Looking at him, everyone gnashed their teeth in hatred. Brother Fatty. Suddenly, Dan Wonkai came in front of Fatso and smiled obsequiously. Fatso quivered and quickly waved his hand to keep all the Qianquan bags. Then he looked at Dan Wonkai warily and asked, "What do you want?" "This. Let's discuss it. There are many important things in my Qianquan bag," Dan Wonkai said pitifully. Fatso said, "What does it have to do with me? You are the one who wanted to bet." Yes, it's my fault. How about this, you return the Qianquan bag to me. If you need anything in the future, I will help you unconditionally," Dan Wonkai said. Fatso was stunned and asked, "Really unconditionally?" Dan Wonkai nodded his head like a chicken pecking at rice. Fatso lowered his head and muttered to himself, looking hesitant. "Brother Fatty." Dan Wonkai was extremely anxious. As the #1 alchemist in Qinghai, his wealth could be said to be more than the sum of Viper and the others. There were even sacred artifacts. Fatso said, "Call me Fat Lord." Okay, Fat Lord." In order to get back the Qianquan bag, Dan Wonkai was going all out. He would do whatever he was told. "Seeing how sincere you are, Fat Lord will." Fatso was all smiles. Dan Wonkai thought that Fatso had agreed, but Fatso's face suddenly changed and he laughed. "No way." Dan Wongsai's face suddenly darkened. Fatso said proudly, "This was won by Fat Lord fair and square. Why should I return it to you?" "Damn Fatso, you're a bastard," Dan Wonkai roared, stomping his feet in anger. "How about it? I'm a bastard." Fatso didn't care at all, and was extremely proud. Looking at his arrogant appearance, everyone wanted to rush up and beat him up. At this time, Qin Feiyang opened his eyes and looked at Wolf King, Dan Wonkai and the others speechlessly and said, "You guys reap what you sow." Although he was breaking through, he could clearly see what everyone was doing. He could only say that compared to Fatso, these guys were still too young. Everyone immediately lowered their heads, extremely vexed. Qin Feiyang was too lazy to care. He got up and walked to the front of the pill furnace, opening it again to refine pills. This time he was refining the small creation pill. Breaking through to the 9-star where Saint naturally opened the door to potential. "Dan Wonkai, come over and help me." After refining the pill, Qin Feiyang called out to Dan Wonkai, then sat cross-legged on the ground and threw the small creation pill into his mouth. Dan Wonkai glared at Fatso and walked behind Qin Feiyang. The Emperor's might roared out and firmly imprisoned Qin Feiyang. Fatso rolled up his sleeves and shouted at everyone, "Your chance to turn the tables has arrived, quickly place your bets and leave." Scram. Everyone immediately glared at him fiercely. They had lost everything. What else could they use to bet? Did they want their lives? Boring. Fatso pursed his lips. This time, Qin Feiyang succeeded on his first try. Viper sighed. Once he breaks through the War Saint realm, his cultivation speed will increase explosively again. I really hope he suddenly becomes a piece of trash. The white-eyed wolf muttered. What did you say? Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows and looked at the white-eyed wolf unkindly. Did brother say anything? Cough cough. The white-eyed wolf coughed dryly and shouted at Fatso and the others. Who said that just now? Quickly stand out for brother. Do you not want to live anymore? Everyone rolled their eyes. Qin Feiyang could not help but roll his eyes at it. He got up and left the castle. At the peak of the mountain, seeing Qin Feiyang appear, Lu Zheng casually glanced at him and did not pay much attention to him. He continued to pester Lu Hong. But suddenly his expression froze. Something seemed to be wrong. He looked at Qin Feiyang again. Immediately, he suddenly stood up, his eyes filled with disbelief. Lu Hong also looked at Qin Feiyang, but there was only a smile on her face. There was no surprise or shock. Swish. Lu Zheng took a step forward and landed in front of Qin Feiyang. He said in shock and anger, "What happened to your cultivation? Is there a problem?" Qin Feiyang looked at him calmly. "Nonsense. You just broke through to an 8-star battle saint. You went to the castle and became a 9-star battle saint. Is this not a problem?" Lu Zheng shouted. Qin Feiyang glanced at him indifferently and walked past him toward Lu Hong. "Tell me, how did you do it?" Lu Zheng chased after him, his eyes full of suspicion. Qin Feiyang suddenly turned around, grabbed Lu Zheng's clothes, and tore them into pieces. Lu Zheng was not the only one who did not expect this move. Lu Hong was also shocked. Qin Feiyang's gaze was fixed on Lu Zheng's chest. There was a dark gold potential imprint there. "What are you trying to do? Let me tell you, I'm not interested in men. You'd better watch yourself." Lu Zheng panicked. He quickly protected the potential mark and looked at Qin Feiyang warily. He obviously wanted to change the topic. Chapter 1201. Of course. Lu Zheng nodded unnaturally. "Are you that capable? If you really relied on yourself to open these doors of potential, would you still be an 8-star battle saint?" Qin Feiyang looked at him coldly. In today's world, only his ancestor relied on his own abilities to open all the doors of potential. Since then, no one else had done it. Lu Zheng claimed that he opened them himself. Wasn't he comparing himself to his ancestor? What a joke. His ancestor was shockingly talented. Who could compare to him after millions of years? Hearing this, Lu Zheng looked rather embarrassed. "Tell me, where did you get the potential pill from? Also, is Lu Zheng your real name?" Qin Feiyang narrowed his eyes, revealing a dangerous signal. He began to suspect Lu Zheng's identity. No. From the beginning, he had never believed this person. Although the Lu family was powerful, they had always been hidden from the world. Very few people knew about them. But it was not that no one knew. For example, Lu Xingqian, the state preceptor, and so on. They all knew of the Lu family's existence. Therefore, he could not rule out the possibility that this person in front of him was deliberately arranged by them to get close to him. Lu Zheng might be a fake name. "I will never change my name. Lu Zheng is me. If you don't believe me, I can swear on the name of my ancestors for 18 generations." Lu Zheng made a solemn vow. He felt a headache coming on. Why was this guy so difficult to deal with? In the past, he had looked down on Qin Feiyang and felt that this little cousin of his was useless. But now that he had interacted with him, he realized that he was too difficult to deal with. Qin Feiyang said indifferently, "It doesn't matter to me if all 18 generations of your ancestors die. I just want to know how your doors of potential were opened." "Bastard, how dare you say such things? Be careful of being struck by lightning." Lu Zheng was instantly enraged. 18 generations of his ancestors. Wasn't that equivalent to 18 generations of Qin Feiyang's ancestors? This was too much. Qin Feiyang said, "What do I have to do with you? Why can't I tell you?" "I just can't tell you. You can make any kind of joke, except for this. I'm telling you, if you dare to talk nonsense again, I'll fight you to the death." Lu Zheng stared at him angrily. Qin Feiyang stared straight at Lu Zheng, his eyes flickering. Lu Zheng felt a little uncomfortable being stared at like that. A moment later, Qin Feiyang withdrew his gaze and walked to Lu Hong's side without saying a word. He then sat down on the stone bench. Lu Hong took out a tea set and obediently squatted at the side to boil water and make tea. Lu Zheng walked up and sat across from Qin Feiyang. "I'll say it again. I have no ill intentions towards you." "Yes." Qin Feiyang nodded faintly. There was no change in his expression. No one knew what he was thinking. Lu Hong finished making tea, poured a cup for Qin Feiyang, and then pushed it in front of Qin Feiyang. "Thank you." Qin Feiyang smiled, picked up the teacup, and took a sip. The fragrance of the tea was strong, and he suddenly felt refreshed. "Where's mine?" Lu Zheng looked at Lu Hong. "Pour it for yourself." Lu Hong said, "Alas, this is the difference. No matter what I do for you, in your eyes it can't compare to Qin Feiyang." Lu Zheng shook his head and sighed. His eyes were full of disappointment and helplessness. Lu Hong rolled her eyes. She turned to Qin Feiyang and said telepathically, "Are you really going to keep him by your side?" Qin Feiyang pondered and didn't say anything. Lu Hong said secretly, "I know you must be thinking that this person is very likely to be from your grandfather's family, but people's hearts are unpredictable. What if he's not? If he's not, there's only one ending for him, death." Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed with murderous intent. "How about this? Use your slave seal to control him. Then you can peek into his inner thoughts. As for his identity, it was only natural that the truth would be revealed." Lu Hong said, "If I had the confidence to control him, I would have done so long ago." Qin Feiyang said secretly, "What do you mean? Didn't you fight half a month ago? He's no match for you at all." Lu Hong was surprised. "You only saw the surface. In fact, his strength is far more than that." Qin Feiyang said secretly, "It can't be?" Lu Hong was surprised. "You're just a bystander. Naturally, you don't know. But I saw it very clearly when I fought with him head-on. I remember that when I used the second style of the Dragon God's roar, although he looked very scared, there was no fear in his eyes. This is enough to show that he still has a certain level of confidence." Qin Feiyang said. Lu Hong said secretly, "According to what you said, aren't we keeping a disaster by our side? Whether it's a disaster or not is still unknown. But now what puzzles me the most is that his Fire Phoenix technique and my Dragon God technique are almost the same. It gives me the feeling that it's a copy of the Dragon God technique." Qin Feiyang's brows were tightly knitted together. Could these two divine arts be related? Lu Hong was also thinking. Because at that time, she also saw it. "What shameful things are you whispering in secret? Could it be that they are discussing how to force a confession out of me?" Lu Zheng looked at the two of them warily. "You guessed right," Lu Hong said. "Xiao Honghonger, it's been so many days. Haven't you seen my feelings? I don't ask you to like me. After all, liking someone, especially a stranger like me, is a process. I will slowly open your heart and let you accept me. But please don't help the evildoer now, okay? You're making me very sad, you know?" Lu Zheng was stunned and immediately cried out sadly. Snot and tears were running down his face. He was very sad. Lu Hong's face was dark and blue veins were popping out. It was a pity that this guy didn't become an actor. Suddenly, Qin Feiyang looked up at Lu Zheng and said, "Do you want to hear a story?" Lu Zheng was stunned and asked suspiciously, "What story?" "There was once a young man who was a proud son, and even had a chance to inherit the throne. But all of a sudden everything changed. Father didn't like him. Not only did he destroy his cultivation, but he also expelled him from the family and became an abandoned son." Qin Feiyang said lightly. Lu Zheng stretched out his hand and said, "Wait, isn't this talking about you?" Qin Feiyang ignored him and continued. "Those years he was desperate and helpless. He didn't know how to live. He hated everyone in the world, especially his maternal grandfather's family." "What the hell? What did his maternal grandfather's family do wrong? Why did he hate them so much?" Lu Zheng frowned and looked very unhappy. The young man's maternal grandfather was a very powerful old man. There were also many powerful people in the family. But when the young man was in dire straits, not only did they not help him, they didn't even visit him. Tell me, if you met such a family member, wouldn't you hate him? You have to know that the young man was only 10 years old at that time. Can he bear this kind of pain? Qin Feiyang looked at Lu Zheng calmly, as if he was talking about something that had nothing to do with him. Lu Zheng was speechless. Although the young man didn't say it, he always hated them in his heart. And he was also a very strong-willed person. No matter what difficulties he encountered, he never thought of asking his maternal grandfather for help. Maybe in his heart he had already cut off this family relationship. Qin Feiyang said lightly. "Nonsense." Lu Zheng suddenly stood up and glared at Qin Feiyang. He shouted, "How do you know that they didn't care about you or visit you? They just didn't show up. You are indeed a member of the Lu family." Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed. Lu Zheng was stunned. His expression suddenly changed. He accidentally let it slip. He said in a low voice, "Are you setting a trap for me? You only realized it now. You are too slow." Qin Feiyang sneered. Lu Zheng was extremely annoyed. He exclaimed in his heart, "Second grandpa, it's not my fault. This kid is too smart. It's impossible to guard against him." "Grandpa, is he okay?" Qin Feiyang looked at Lu Zheng and asked. Lu Zheng sighed helplessly and nodded. "He's okay. Do you really hate us?" Qin Feiyang smiled and said, "I used to hate you but not anymore." Lu Zheng breathed a sigh of relief and said, "Actually we did appear. It's just that you didn't see it." "When?" Qin Feiyang asked. Lu Zheng said, "When you were beheaded in public, second grandpa personally took Uncle He and me to the imperial city to save you. But in the end, we saw that someone came to save you, so we didn't do anything." Qin Feiyang nodded in realization and said, "Then how should I address you?" Lu Zheng said with a smile, "Call me cousin." Qin Feiyang looked at him unhappily. Lu Zheng said, "I'm not joking. I'm really your cousin." Qin Feiyang said helplessly, "Okay, I believe you. But why do you have to hide your identity? This is second grandpa's order. He doesn't want to hide it from you. He wants to hide it from the people around you. For some reason, our Lu family can't attract the attention of the imperial palace. So second grandpa is worried that the people around you will leak the secret." Lu Zheng said. "So that's the case." Qin Feiyang mumbled and said with a smile, "Don't worry. Whether it's Lu Hong or the others, those who stay by my side are the people I trust the most." Lu Zheng said, "Then we're not wrong to be worried. After all, we don't know the people around you." Qin Feiyang nodded. "That was true," he said. "But I don't understand. Why are you afraid that the people of the imperial palace will know?" Lu Zheng said, "You have to ask second grandpa about this. I don't have the authority to tell you. Of course, second grandpa won't see you now." Qin Feiyang frowned and asked, "The second grandpa you're talking about is my grandfather?" No. Second grandpa is your second grandfather. Your grandfather is the eldest. The clansmen call him great-grandpa." Lu Zheng said. Qin Feiyang said, "Then where is grandfather now?" A cold light flashed in Lu Zheng's eyes. He said with a smile, "Do you still need to ask? He's definitely in the village." "The village?" Qin Feiyang was stunned. Lu Zheng said with a smile, "Our Lu family is a group of ordinary people. So we live like ordinary people." "You're ordinary people? You must be kidding." Lu Hong rolled her eyes at him. "Hong, if you're interested, I can take you there. But there's a rule in our village. Any foreign woman who enters the village must first marry a man in the village." "Why don't you marry me?" Lu Zheng said with a chuckle. "Get lost." Chapter 1202. Lu Zheng pointed to the sky and vowed, "Heaven and earth can bear witness to my love for you. Come on. Aren't you trying to get close to Qin Feiyang by trying to get close to me?" Lu Hong looked at him with disdain. Lu Zheng was stunned and laughed dryly. "You guys saw through me. We're not blind." Lu Hong rolled her eyes at him. Lu Zheng smiled embarrassedly. Buzz. Suddenly, Qin Feiyang's image crystal made a sound. "Be quiet." Qin Feiyang glanced at the two of them and took out the image crystal. The next moment, an illusory figure appeared. It was a burly man with a tall figure and a rough face. His cheeks and chin were full of stubble, looking a little sloppy. "It's me, Yan Wei," the burly man said. Qin Feiyang asked, "How is it?" "The situation is not optimistic." Yan Wei shook his head. Qin Feiyang's eyes darkened. "What do you mean?" "To get close to the state preceptor, I have to enter the law enforcement hall first. But now I don't even have a way to enter the law enforcement hall. Because the law enforcement hall's recruitment conditions are too harsh. They directly recruit from the War God Temple." Yan Wei said. "War God Temple?" Qin Feiyang was silent. He naturally knew about this place. Only those with extreme talent, and at least a battle sage, could enter the War God Temple. The most important thing was that the War God Temple never recruited from the outside. They were selected from the disciples of the temple. And Yan Wei couldn't become a disciple of the temple at all now. The first was cultivation. The second was age. It had already far exceeded the recruitment standards of the temple. "I've already thought of many ways. Even finding someone to get in through the back door didn't work, so I can only look for you to see if you have any ideas. Yan Wei was a little anxious. Don't worry, there will definitely be a way. Qin Feiyang comforted and lowered his head to ponder. What's going on? Lu Zheng glanced at Yan Wei and then looked at Lu Hong suspiciously. However, Lu Hong didn't even look at him. She lowered her head and pondered. Suddenly, Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed. He looked up at Yan Wei and said, "Go find the Imperial Advisor and bring him here." What? Yan Wei was shocked. Lu Hong and Lu Zheng also looked at Qin Feiyang in surprise. Wasn't bringing the Imperial Tutor here equivalent to digging his own grave? Qin Feiyang said, "Do as I say. It's best if you come back in an hour. I need to make some arrangements first." All right. Yan Wei nodded, and the shadow disappeared. Lu Hong withdrew her gaze and looked at Qin Feiyang with a frown. What on earth do you want to do? If we rely on ordinary methods, I don't know how long it will take for Yan Wei to lurk beside the Imperial Advisor. So we have to use some extraordinary means. Qin Feiyang said. Lu Zheng said suspiciously, "You want to use yourself as bait to help Yan Wei?" Qin Feiyang nodded. Good idea. Lu Zheng gave him a thumbs up. You call this a good idea? Lu Hong said angrily. It is. Think about it. After Yan Wei reports to the Imperial Advisor, the Imperial Advisor will bring people to capture Qin Feiyang. At that time, he will definitely reward Yan Wei. Yan Wei can take advantage of the situation and propose to follow the Imperial Advisor. And when the Imperial Advisor sees that Yan Wei has made a contribution, he may agree at once. It can be said that there is no other way more direct and effective than this. Lu Zheng said. Lu Hong said, "Of course I know what you said, but this is too risky. I don't agree." Qin Feiyang said with a smile, "Don't worry, I have other arrangements. Nothing will happen." What arrangements? Lu Hong frowned. Qin Feiyang took out the image crystal and poured his battle qi into it. Buzz. After a while, a familiar figure appeared in the void. It was Lu Xingchen. Lu Xingchen asked with a smile, "What can I do for you, Brother Qin?" Qin Feiyang said, "I need your help with something. Come to the Black Dragon Pool." Lu Xingchen said, "I know you don't come to me for no reason. Do you want to go now?" Qin Feiyang nodded. "Okay, I'll be right there." Lu Xingchen nodded and turned off the image crystal. Why does your relationship with Lu Xingchen seem a little unusual? Don't tell me you've really joined forces with him. As your cousin, I have to tell you seriously that you must never betray the great Qin Empire. Lu Zheng said solemnly. No matter how much of a bastard I am, I won't forget my roots. Right now we're just taking advantage of each other. Qin Feiyang said. Lu Zheng said with a smile, that'd better be the case. Otherwise, it'll be ugly if we brothers kill each other. Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows and said, I don't think I've acknowledged you as my cousin yet, right? Whether you acknowledge me or not is destined. You can't run away even if you want to. Come on, call me big brother first. Let me feel it. Lu Zheng chuckled, his face full of lust. Qin Feiyang directly ignored him. Swish. Not long after, Lu Xingchen arrived. He glanced at Lu Zheng and asked in confusion, Who is he? Qin Feiyang said, A subordinate I just subdued. Lu Zheng's face darkened, and he said angrily through voice transmission, Aren't you afraid of being struck by lightning? Cut the crap. Qin Feiyang glared at him, then looked at Lu Xingchen and said, The state preceptor will be here later. Help me do something. What? Lu Xingchen was stunned and said in surprise, What the hell? Why is he here? Qin Feiyang said, Don't ask. You just have to hide in the dark and save me before he kills me. That's not a big problem. But I'm thinking, are you planning something again? If you are, there's no need to hide it from me, right? Lu Xingchen frowned. What do you think? Qin Feiyang asked back. Okay, I didn't ask. I'll go to the space divine item first. Lu Xingchen smiled helplessly. Wait. Qin Feiyang reached out to stop him and asked, Where is Ren Duxing now? Lu Xingchen said with a smile, Tell me what you're planning. I'll tell you where he is. You can go to the space divine item now. Qin Feiyang bluntly asked him to leave. Lu Xingchen smiled and didn't linger any longer. In an instant, he disappeared without a trace. Lu Zheng said through voice transmission, "Can he be trusted?" If Lu Xingchen didn't help when the state preceptor attacked, wouldn't he be killed? Don't worry. He still needs me to do something for him. Although I don't know what it is, I won't leave him in the lurch. You go to the castle and stay there. Qin Feiyang said to himself. The castle. Lu Zheng's eyes lit up. He had been interested in this mysterious castle for a long time. Qin Feiyang waved his hand and sent Lu Zheng in. Then he glanced at the top of the mountain and turned to Lu Hong. He said apologetically, "I'm really sorry. You've worked so hard to arrange everything these days. It might be ruined in a moment." "It's okay." Lu Hong shook her head. Qin Feiyang smiled and picked up his teacup. He chatted with Lu Hong while sipping his tea. Time passed quietly. When an hour was up, a terrifying divine power suddenly descended on the top of the mountain. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed. He exchanged glances with Lu Hong and pretended to be surprised. He looked up and saw a white-haired old man standing in the sky. Yan Wei was also beside him. "Why are you here?" Qin Feiyang suddenly stood up, his face full of horror. Boom. But the response was a terrifying divine power. Qin Feiyang and Lu Hong were immediately imprisoned. Swoosh. The state preceptor took a step forward and landed in front of them. He sneered. "Let's see how you can escape this time." Yan Wei also landed behind the state preceptor. He glanced at Qin Feiyang and Lu Zheng and sneered. Qin Feiyang said in a low voice, "How did you know we were here?" The state preceptor pointed at Yan Wei and smiled. "I have to thank him." Qin Feiyang's gaze turned and landed on Yan Wei. His eyes flashed coldly. Yan Wei sneered. "Don't look at me like that. I'm just doing my duty as a subject." Qin Feiyang said. "I don't remember seeing you before." "Yes, you haven't seen me before, but I've seen you before. Yesterday, I was looking for herbs in the mountains and accidentally came here. I found you hiding here? You, Qin Feiyang, are full of evil. Everyone has the right to kill you. Naturally, I had to inform the state preceptor as soon as possible." Yan Wei said. Qin Feiyang's eyes were hazy. He said, "Do you know what the consequences of offending me are?" Yan Wei said, "I don't know. I only know how to get rid of evil for the people and share the burden of the state preceptor." The state preceptor was full of smiles. He seemed to be very satisfied with Yan Wei's attitude. He glanced at the mountain peak and smiled at Qin Feiyang and Lu Zheng. He said, "It seems that you plan to stay here for a long time." Qin Feiyang was silent. "Don't think about it. No one will come to save you now. When I kill you, your castle and Changshui will be mine. Haha. At that time, not to mention Mu Tianyang. Even if all the strong people in the world come out, they won't be able to stop me." The state preceptor laughed wildly. His ambition was exposed. "What exactly do you want to do? Rebellion?" Qin Feiyang shouted. "Rebellion? This is not a small crime, but it has nothing to do with you." After the state preceptor said that, his old eyes surged with killing intent. He landed in front of Qin Feiyang and slapped his palm towards Qin Feiyang's head. "Go to hell." He laughed sinisterly. He had already imagined the scene of Qin Feiyang's head bursting open. But at this moment, Qin Feiyang and Lu Hong, who were standing in front of him, suddenly disappeared without a trace. How is this possible? The state preceptor's eyes widened in anger. He quickly scanned the surrounding void. He could actually escape from the imprisonment of the divine might? "Little bastard!" Abruptly, he roared, his hair standing on end. His divine might rolled in all directions. The giant peak under his feet instantly shattered and turned into dust. Following closely, his divine sense flooded out in all directions. However, wherever his divine sense went, he did not catch Qin Feiyang's aura, nor did he find any traces of the castle. "This is impossible." His old face was filled with disbelief. How did this little bastard do it? Yan Wei's eyes flashed slightly, revealing a look of horror, and muttered, "I actually let him escape. This time it's over. He definitely won't let me go. What should I do? I don't want to die yet." These words were obviously said deliberately for the state preceptor to hear. The state preceptor suddenly turned to look at him and shouted, "Shut up for me." Chapter 1203. A mere Qin Feiyang was able to scare you to this extent. With just this bit of courage, are you worthy of following this nation preceptor? The imperial tutor snorted coldly. Before coming, Yanwei had already made a request. Yanwei panicked and hurriedly knelt on the ground saying, "I know I was wrong, I will definitely change." The imperial tutor glanced at him indifferently, then glanced at the void, opened a portal, and left with a belly full of anger. Yanwei's eyes flashed, and he hurriedly got up and chased after him. At the same time, above a certain lake, a space divine object was hidden in the void and swept across. Inside the space divine object, Qin Feiyang, Lu Hong, and Lu Xingchen stood side by side. Previously, after saving Qin Feiyang and Lu Hong in the Black Dragon Swamp, Lu Xingchen immediately left in the space divine object. Although he was not afraid of the imperial tutor now, because of his identity, he did not want to meet the imperial tutor too early. "Stop." Qin Feiyang suddenly stretched out his hand. The scene in the void in front of him immediately froze in the sky above a mountain. This meant that the space divine object had stopped. "You owe me another favor." Lu Xingchen looked at Qin Feiyang with a smile. Qin Feiyang said, "Speaking of favors, it seems that you also owe me a lot. Back then I spared Feng Wuxia, Wan Qiu, and the others a few times." "You actually still remember?" Lu Xingchen shook his head and smiled helplessly. "How can I forget a favor? Besides, it's a favor you owe me. But I'm wondering, where exactly is Wan Qiu now?" Qin Feiyang said. Last time, he specifically asked the commander of the Kirin army to look for Wan Qiu, but the result was to no avail. "You should be able to guess." Lu Xingchen did not answer directly. "As expected, it's hidden in your spatial divine item." Qin Feiyang smiled coldly, glanced at the secret room in front of him, and said, "I remember you said that this secret room is only a part of your spatial divine item." "Yes." Lu Xingchen nodded. Qin Feiyang said, "Then are you interested in taking me to other places?" Lu Xingchen smiled and said, "I don't think there's a need for that because you've seen it before and even entered it." "You have?" Qin Feiyang frowned. Lu Xingchen said, "That's right. Do you remember the valley you found in the desert of death?" Qin Feiyang suddenly understood. It turned out that the valley was a spatial divine object. "Since we're working together now, can you tell me if you've subdued anyone else other than Dong Qing, Zhang Jin, and Wan Qiu?" Qin Feiyang said, "There is. And they're all people you know. But you can only guess who they are. Don't say that I'm not sincere. After all, I didn't see your sincerity either." Lu Xingchen chuckled. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed, and he said indifferently, "Okay, I didn't ask. Send us out." "Okay. But before we leave, I want to tell you something." "Have you heard of the Sea of Reincarnation?" Lu Xingchen said. "The Sea of Reincarnation?" Qin Feiyang's eyes trembled, and a trace of fear crawled up his face. "It seems that you've heard of it. If you're interested, you can go there. I promise you won't go in vain." After saying that, Lu Xingchen waved his hand and directly sent Qin Feiyang out. Then, he drove the spatial divine item, and disappeared at the end of the mountain range without looking back. Lu Hong glanced at the void and said telepathically, "What kind of place is the Sea of Reincarnation?" The Sea of Reincarnation is the most terrifying forbidden area of the Great Qin Empire. It's located in the extreme north of the imperial capital. It's said that even the gods don't dare to set foot there. Qin Feiyang said in a deep voice. When he was young, he had read about the Sea of Reincarnation in an ancient history book. It was a very terrifying place. But he didn't expect Lu Xingchen to suddenly mention this place. What exactly was hidden in the Sea of Reincarnation? He knew Lu Xingchen well. It was impossible for him to just say it casually. There must be some kind of factor or conspiracy. Are you kidding? Even the gods don't dare to set foot there. Isn't that a bit too exaggerated? Lu Hong was surprised. I've never been there, so I don't know the specific situation. But when I was young, someone repeatedly warned me that I could go anywhere except the Sea of Reincarnation. Qin Feiyang said. Lu Hong asked. The current emperor. Qin Feiyang said. Lu Hong's pupils constricted. What kind of person was the current emperor? To be able to say such words was enough to prove that the sea of reincarnation was indeed extraordinary. Do you think I should go? Qin Feiyang looked at Lu Hong and asked. It's best not to go. Because with Lu Xingqian's character, he definitely won't let you take advantage of him. There must be a conspiracy. Lu Hong said. That's what I thought. But I really have to make a trip because I want to see what tricks he's playing. Qin Feiyang said with a smile. Lu Hong rolled her eyes at him and said helplessly, You know that there are tigers in the mountain, but you still want to go there. Qin Feiyang smiled slightly and said, But before we go, we have to make a trip to the treasure pavilion first. With that, he took out 2 illusory form pills. Buzz. At this moment, the image crystal rang. Qin Feiyang took out the image crystal, and Fatso's shadow appeared. Fatso pursed his lips and said, Your cousin is looking for you. Cousin? Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows and turned off the image crystal. With a wave of his hand, Lu Zheng appeared out of thin air. He has to send a message to you first. I've never seen such a troublesome space divine object. As soon as Lu Zheng appeared, he began to complain, his eyes full of disdain for the castle. Qin Feiyang was surprised and said, You mean you've seen a lot of space divine objects? Lu Zheng was taken aback and waved his hand. It's not as exaggerated as you say, but I've seen space divine objects. Where have you seen them? Qin Feiyang's eyes sparkled. Don't look at me like that. Even if I give you a space divine object, you may not dare to accept it. Lu Zheng joked. Why don't you give it a try? Qin Feiyang provoked. Lu Zheng chuckled and said playfully, Is that so? What if I say that the owner of this space divine object is your grandfather? My grandfather also has a space divine object. Qin Feiyang's eyes trembled. Lu Zheng said proudly, What's so great about a space divine object? Let me tell you, I even have a divine object, Lu Zheng. Qin Feiyang's heart trembled. This was greatly beyond his expectations. He said in surprise, Really? Of course. Why do you think the emperors of the past were so afraid of the Lu family? I'm not afraid to tell you the truth. If it weren't for the existence of the Lu family, you and your mother, who is my aunt, would have already gone to hell. Lu Zheng smiled coldly and arrogantly. Qin Feiyang sucked in a breath of cold air. He never expected that the foundation of his grandfather's family was so terrifying. But there was another problem. Since the Lu family was so strong, why didn't they dare to enter the imperial city openly? What kind of secret was hidden in this? Lu Zheng glanced at him and said indifferently, Don't think about it. There are some things that you will never think of in your lifetime. Huff. Qin Feiyang took a deep breath and calmed his emotions. He asked, Why are you looking for me? Lu Zheng chuckled and said, Aren't you going to the imperial city? I happen to want to go shopping too. I'm not going to play. Qin Feiyang frowned. You do your thing and I'll play mine. What's the matter? Lu Zheng asked back. Qin Feiyang shrugged helplessly. He took a phantom pill and gave the other to Lu Hong. Qin Feiyang disguised himself as a thin and sickly young man. Lu Hong only changed her facial features slightly, but she still looked so charming. Lu Zheng touched his chin and looked at Lu Hong with a frivolous look. He said with a smirk, You're not a particularly charming woman, but why do I like you more and more? Hooligan. Of course, Lu Hong didn't look happy. Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows and took out a phantom pill. He looked at Lu Zheng and said, Do you need it? Of course. Although I rarely go to the imperial city, some old monsters in the imperial city still know me. After all, I'm young, rich, and talented. I can't keep a low profile even if I want to. Lu Zheng snatched the phantom pill and threw it into his mouth. Idiot, right? Lu Hong rolled her eyes. Lu Zheng suddenly felt wronged and said, Am I so unbearable in your heart? I'm so sad. Get lost. Lu Hong's face darkened. Didn't this bastard have a serious moment? Lu Zheng chuckled. The next moment, he turned into a devilish young man, wearing a purple robe. His skin was as white as jade, and his long purple hair was extremely flamboyant. Moreover, He also took out a folding fan from his Qianquan bag and waved it leisurely. Looking at Qin Feiyang and Lu Zheng, he said with an evil smile, "How about it? Am I handsome now?" Lu Hong looked him up and down and said seriously, "Put on some makeup, wear a dress, and tie a ponytail. You'll definitely be more handsome." The smile on Lu Zheng's face suddenly froze. Wasn't she saying that he was a sissy? "I didn't expect a little girl like you to have such a sharp tongue. But I like it. Are you ready?" Lu Zheng said. "Ready for what?" Lu Hong didn't understand. Lu Zheng said with an evil smile, "Ready to accept my bombardment of pursuit. Don't be narcissistic. Even if I become a nun, I won't like a man like you." Lu Hong snorted coldly. "It's okay. If you become a nun, I'll become a monk. Then we'll be more compatible." Lu Zheng smiled evilly. Lu Hong was mad. How could this person be so shameless? Looking at the two of them bickering, Qin Feiyang's lips curled into a meaningful smile. If Lu Zheng really liked Lu Hong, then this could be considered a good thing. After all, Lu Zheng, whether it was his family background or his own conditions, was completely compatible with Lu Hong. However, was Lu Zheng joking? Or was he really interested? It still needed to be confirmed. Buzz. He waved his hand and opened the portal. Looking at the two of them, he said with a faint smile, "Let's go." After that, he took the lead and stepped into the portal. "I'm telling you, stop fooling around." Lu Hong glared fiercely at Lu Zheng, then turned and followed him in. She said this because she was worried that Qin Feiyang would misunderstand. Because there was only one person in her heart, and that was Qin Feiyang. Fooling around? Lu Zheng gave an enigmatic smile and stepped into the portal as well. Empire City. The first district could be said to be the most prosperous district in Empire City. That was because there were countless wealthy and influential people gathered here. Chapter 1204. Precious Treasure Pavilion was undoubtedly the most bustling place in the first district. 4 black-robed guards stood upright on both sides of the entrance, watching the people entering and exiting with eagle-like eyes that were extremely sharp. They were in charge of maintaining the order of Precious Treasure Pavilion, and could not be distracted at any time. In front of the entrance, on the streets, more than 10 young men and women walked side by side. The men had a heroic aura. The women were young and beautiful. They wore bright and beautiful clothes and exuded an extraordinary aura. It was obvious that they were from wealthy families. A black-robed young man smiled. "Brother Haolong, I didn't expect that you would come to Precious Treasure Pavilion as well." "I didn't want to come either. Feifei was the one who dragged me here." The person called Brother Haolong shook his head helplessly. He was 7 feet tall. He wore a luxurious purple robe. His features were handsome, and his black hair was like a waterfall. He was rather handsome, but there was arrogance between his brows. Walking with this person was a young woman in her prime. She was also wearing a luxurious purple dress. She was quite pretty. However, her pretentious appearance made one feel uncomfortable. The two of them held hands intimately and looked like a pair of lovers. "Brother Haolong, Sister Feifei, the two of you are truly a match made in heaven." A white-robed young man at the side smiled, and the flattery in his words was clear. "Of course. In the entire capital, who else is worthy of Feifei other than me?" The purple-robed young man said proudly. That's right. Brother Haolong is handsome and extremely talented. He's an unparalleled talent of the capital. Most importantly, Brother Haolong has a strong brother, who is known as the #1 monster incarnate of the capital. We can never compare to him." The group of young men and women laughed. The purple-robed young man had a proud expression, and enjoyed the feeling of superiority. How shameless. However, the group of people did not notice that there were 2 men and a woman behind them. One of them had a sickly face and was extremely weak. The other was devilish and eye-catching. The remaining woman had a picturesque appearance and her clothes fluttered, making one want to take a few more glances. That was right. They were Qin Feiyang, Lu Zheng, and Lu Hong. After entering the first district, they followed the group of people in front of them and walked towards the treasure pavilion. At first they didn't care, but when he heard their conversation, it turned out that they were a group of rich playboys. Actually, being a silk pants wasn't a big deal because there was no lack of silk pants in Imperial City. But, as a silk pants, not only did he not know his own limits, he even took pride in it and was immensely complacent. This made people feel disgusted. Therefore Lu Hong could not help but mutter, her eyes filled with disgust. Just get used to it. Qin Feiyang said with a smile. It's not a matter of habit. It's a matter of principle. Look at them. Each and every one of them is ignorant and incompetent, arrogant and lascivious. They still think they're so great. It's disgusting to look at them. Lu Hong snorted coldly. I also dislike those people. However, little cousin, this man called Haolong has some grudges with you. Lu Zheng snickered. Grudges? Qin Feiyang was stunned and looked at him suspiciously. Lu Zheng said with a smile, he's from the Zhuge family. His full name is Zhuge Haolong. He's Zhuge Mingyang's cousin. Qin Feiyang suddenly understood. What do you think? Do you have an urge to beat him up? Lu Zheng smirked. Beat him up? Qin Feiyang shook his head and smiled. He's just a clown. He can't arouse my interest. If it was Zhuge Mingyang, it would be a different story. You're not interested, but I am. Lu Zheng chuckled and shook his head with a sigh. They're all marquis descendants, but they're all licking their faces to curry favor with others. How pathetic. His voice was not loud, but it could clearly reach the ears of Zhuge Haolong and the others. The group of people was stunned. They turned to look at Lu Zheng and did not pay much attention to him. They thought that Lu Zheng was talking about someone else. Qin Feiyang and Zhuge Haolong were also very dissatisfied with Lu Zheng's actions. Lu Hong furrowed her beautiful brows and said unhappily, You came all the way here just to make trouble for us? This is considered trouble? You think too highly of them. Lu Zheng said disdainfully. You're very arrogant, aren't you? Lu Hong said with a dark face. In this situation, it was naturally best to keep a low profile as much as possible, because if they caused any big trouble, it would not benefit them at all. Seeing that Lu Hong was really angry, Lu Zheng quickly smiled apologetically and said, Okay. I'm being nosy. I won't cause trouble anymore, okay? Don't be angry. Look, you look so ugly when you're angry. Don't look if it's ugly. Lu Hong turned her head and snorted. Lu Zheng was stunned. What did he say wrong again? Qin Feiyang coughed and said telepathically, Women are very sensitive to the word ugly. I see. Lu Zheng suddenly understood. Qin Feiyang said in amusement, Your EQ is not good. You have to learn more from others. Humph. You speak as if you're very good. If you were really good, you wouldn't still be single now. Lu Zheng said disdainfully. Qin Feiyang was stunned and looked quite embarrassed. It seemed that his EQ was not very good either. Brother Haolong, wait. Suddenly, there was a loud shout. A young man in brocade ran over from behind. Get lost. Looking at Qin Feiyang and the other two in front of him, he did not say anything about bypassing them. He shouted arrogantly and directly reached out to push Lu Hong and Lu Zheng away. Caught off guard, Lu Hong and Lu Zheng fell to the ground on the spot, looking very embarrassed. Haven't you heard that a good dog doesn't block the way? But in this regard, the young man in brocade did not apologize at all. Instead, he looked at Lu Hong and Lu Zheng arrogantly and shouted. Then, the young man in brocade swaggered toward Zhuge Haolong and the others without looking back. My bad temper. Lu Zheng was immediately angry. He got up from the ground, rolled up his sleeves, and walked angrily toward the young man in brocade. Lu Hong got up and pulled him. How can you tolerate this? Lu Zheng raised his eyebrows. Lu Hong tidied up her dress and hair, glanced at the young man in brocade, and said lightly, If we bite back after being bitten by a dog, what's the difference between us and a dog? Lu Zheng was stunned and laughed. Hunger is right. We can't be dogs that bite people. Who are you calling a dog? The young man in brocade suddenly turned around and stared fiercely at Lu Zheng and Lu Hong. Zhuge Haolong and the others had already stopped when they heard the young man in brocade, so they also heard it. They looked at Lu Hong and Lu Zheng with a trace of hostility in their eyes. What's going on? The pedestrians on the street also stopped and surrounded them, looking at the two groups of people suspiciously. You're still angry? Lu Zheng raised his eyebrows. I told you not to be a dog that bites people. Let's go. Lu Hong said lightly and continued to walk toward the treasure pavilion. For my lifelong happiness, I'll tolerate it. Lu Zheng clenched his fists and chased after Lu Hong. Qin Feiyang was like a bystander from beginning to end, remaining silent. However, they didn't want to cause trouble, but it didn't mean that others wouldn't either. Just as the three of them walked in front of Zhuge Haolong and the others and were about to go around them, Zhuge Haolong's eyes turned cold. He stood in front of the three of them and said, "Did I say you can leave?" At the same time, the others also spread out and surrounded Qin Feiyang's group of three, all of them sneering endlessly. "You're taking advantage of us?" Lu Zheng was irritable. Lu Hong reached out to stop him. She looked at Zhuge Haolong patiently and asked, "Then what do you want?" Zhuge Haolong waved at the young man in brocade. "Hao Yu, come here." The young man in brocade walked to Zhuge Haolong's side and crossed his arms. He looked at Qin Feiyang and the other two, the sarcasm on his face undisguised. Zhuge Haolong said, "Do you know who he is?" Lu Hong said, "I'm new here. I really don't know who he is." Zhuge Haolong said, "Then listen carefully. He's called Zhuge Haoyu, my younger brother." Zhuge Haolong? Zhuge Haoyu. Who are they? So impressive? Someone in the crowd asked softly. You don't even know them? Are you from the countryside? Well, it's my first time in Imperial City. No wonder. Let me tell you, they are people you can't afford to offend. Have you heard of Zhuge Wuhou? I've definitely heard of him. Zhuge Haolong and Zhuge Haoyu's father is Zhuge Wuhou's younger brother. In other words, these two brothers are the direct descendants of the Zhuge family. With such a powerful family background, how can they not be impressive? Even if they kill people on the street, no one will dare to do anything to them. Do you understand? If that's the case, won't those three be in trouble? Nonsense. Those who dare to offend the Zhuge family will lose a layer of skin, even if they don't die. But they didn't do anything wrong. They've been tolerating. Isn't this too unfair to them? Young man, you're too young. In Imperial City, there's no such thing as fair or unfair. There's only power. That's right. For commoners like us, it's best to tuck our tails between our legs. These discussions were very soft. They were afraid that Zhuge Haolong's group would hear it and bring harm to themselves. But Qin Feiyang and the other two could hear it clearly, because their cultivation was much stronger than Zhuge Haolong's group. The strongest in Zhuge Haolong's group was only a 1-star combat emperor. The weakest was only a 5-star combat king. They naturally didn't put such a small character in their eyes. Lu Hong smiled and said, "So they're from the Zhuge family. But I heard that Zhuge Wuhou is a righteous and respected person. But how can his descendants be a group of dogs that bite people?" She's actually humiliating Zhuge Haolong. Is she really not afraid of death? This Zhuge Haolong is relying on the power of the martial Marquis government. He can do anything. Yeah, he used to do evil in Imperial City. He bullied people and women. And I also heard that Zhuge Mingyang took good care of him. Zhuge Mingyang is the #1 monster in the Imperial City. Even the Imperial Master and His Majesty think highly of him. Who dares to offend such a person? The people murmured and looked at Lu Hong in disbelief. Chapter 1205. Zhuge Mingyang, Qin Feiyang muttered. Zhuge Mingyang had indeed contributed greatly to the Zhuge family's current status. In the past, Zhuge Wuhou and the other Wuhou had similar statuses. But because of the birth of Zhuge Mingyang, this peerless talent, Zhuge Wuhou's status in the imperial capital slowly surpassed the other Wuhou. As the saying goes, a mother's status depends on her son. And now, this saying was very suitable for Zhuge Wuhou. Say it again if you have the guts. Towards Lu Hong's repeated humiliations, Zhuge Haolong and Zhuge Haoyu's eyes were filled with killing intent. Lu Hong said indifferently, "I'm not in the mood to talk nonsense with dogs, Scram. You're courting death." Zhuge Haolong's gaze turned cold as he slapped towards Lu Hong. Slap. However, Lu Hong was one step ahead of him. She slapped Zhuge Haolong's face solidly. A blood-red palm print immediately appeared on Zhuge Haolong's face. You dare to hit me? Zhuge Haolong was stunned. He touched his burning face and looked at Lu Hong in disbelief. Zhuge Haoyu, the purple-clothed lady, and the surrounding crowd were all dumbfounded. The Zhuge family could be said to be like the sun in the sky, and there was actually someone who dared to hit a direct descendant of the Zhuge family on the streets? Was she crazy? This was no longer Zhuge Haolong's personal problem, but the entire Zhuge family's face. Hitting you is considered light. Don't provoke me again. It's not a problem to kill you if you deny it. Scram, don't block the way. Lu Hong released her aura, and Zhuge Haolong and the rest who were blocking in front were instantly thrown off their feet and rolled on the ground in a sorry state. Then Lu Hong walked towards the treasure pavilion without looking back. Qin Feiyang and Lu Zheng looked at each other and smiled, then slowly followed. All these years, Lu Hong had been cultivating in seclusion day and night. Not only had she opened the door of potential, she had also stepped into the Battle Saint realm. Naturally, she wouldn't take Zhuge Haolong and the other rich playboys seriously. After all, Battle Saints and Battle Emperors were people from two different worlds. One was heaven, one was earth. Stop! But at this moment, a shy and angry shout rang out. The purple-clothed woman crawled up from the ground. Her face was both green and red. She was also the daughter of a martial marquis, and had a precious body. Normally, she was like the moon surrounded by stars, so when had she ever suffered such humiliation? Moreover, it was done in public. That was why she was angry. However, Lu Hong turned a deaf ear. Zhuge Haolong, is this all you've got? You don't care that I'm being bullied? The purple-clothed woman was furious and vented her anger on Zhuge Haolong. Men were all prideful. Not to mention Zhuge Haolong, a hedonistic son of rich parents. Hearing the purple-robed woman's words, he suddenly became hot-headed and took out a dagger from his Qingquan bag, stabbing it towards Lu Hong. Still not done. Lu Zheng raised his eyebrows. I don't need you to interfere. Lu Hong looked at him coldly and suddenly turned around. With a step, she landed in front of Zhuge Haolong and easily dodged the dagger. Her jade-like hand shot out. Slap. A loud slap immediately rang out. Ah! Zhuge Haolong let out a miserable howl and crashed into the crowd behind him like a meteorite. His entire face was deformed. The teeth in his mouth were smashed into pieces by Lu Hong's slap. He covered his mouth as blood flowed out and rolled on the ground in pain. The purple-clothed woman and the others were dumbfounded. Zhuge Haolong was not only a direct descendant of the Zhuge family, but also Zhuge Mingyang's cousin. She actually dared to be so heavy-handed? Was she not afraid of the Zhuge family's revenge? Lu Hong smiled coldly. Revenge? No one could deny that the Zhuge family was strong, but they were not ordinary people either. They were not even afraid of the imperial tutor and the emperor, let alone the Zhuge family. Lu Hong looked at the purple-clothed woman and said indifferently, such a useless man, and you're still with him. What kind of taste do you have? It's none of your business. The purple-clothed woman stammered, her eyes filled with fear. It's true that it's none of my business. After all, you're not a good person either. Lu Hong smiled disdainfully and turned around, leaving the purple-clothed woman with a proud back view. I'm not a good person? The purple-clothed woman immediately flew into a rage out of humiliation. Like a shrew, she shouted hysterically. Who are you? If you have the ability, tell me your name. You don't deserve to know my name, Lu Hong said without turning her head. The purple-clothed woman was so angry that she almost vomited blood. She was the daughter of a marquis. Her status was so high that ordinary people could not reach her. She actually said that she did not deserve to know? Who do you think you are? What qualifications do you have to show off in front of me? The purple-clothed woman was flustered and exasperated. My qualifications are my strength. If you're not convinced, you can come and fight with me. Lu Hong turned around and looked at her, her eyes filled with a confident smile. The purple-clothed woman was stunned. Her cultivation was not even comparable to Zhuge Haolong. How could she be a match for this person? If you don't have the guts, then don't shout. This will only make you more embarrassed. Lu Hong snorted. When she turned around, she suddenly looked at Zhuge Haoyu and sneered. A silk pants like you, won't it be a pity to kill you? After she said that, she raised her hand and pointed in the air. A ray of battle chi burst out and directly entered Zhuge Haoyu's lower abdomen. Zhuge Haoyu immediately fell to the ground, holding his lower abdomen and howling miserably. Seeing this scene, the surrounding spectators all sucked in a breath of cold air. Not to mention injuring Zhuge Haolong, she even crippled Zhuge Haoyu. This woman really ate the guts of a leopard. The purple-clothed woman and the group of silk pants all retreated in fear, not daring to speak again. Actually, this kind of method was nothing at all. Just like Qin Feiyang, who had been tempered by blood and fire since young, this kind of thing to him was just a small matter. But the purple-clothed woman and the others were different. As the children of Marquis, they usually lived in luxury and were spoiled. No matter where they went, they would be surrounded by people. When had they ever seen such a scene? So they were scared out of their wits. They are both noble children, but why is there such a big difference between them and Qin Feiyang? Looking at the group of cowardly and incompetent performance, Lu Hong shook her head and muttered to herself. Then, she turned and walked towards Qin Feiyang. Lu Jing went up and laughed. Hong, you are really too cool. I realized that I have really fallen in love with you. Lu Hong frowned. Do you fall in love with everyone you see? Otherwise, why would the word love come out of your mouth? In all honesty, I have only said this to you. I just don't like to hide it, so I will say what I want to say, Lu Jing said. Don't give me that. Lu Hong rolled her eyes at him, walked in front of Qin Feiyang and whispered. You won't blame me, right? How dare he? You are his future sister-in-law. If he dares to blame you, I will smack his butt. Lu Jing snorted coldly. Shut up. Qin Feiyang and Lu Hong glared at him at the same time. Their eyes were extremely ferocious. Lu Jing smiled embarrassedly and tactfully kept his mouth shut. Otherwise, he would cause public outrage. Qin Feiyang was quite helpless towards Lu Jing. Although he was not serious, he was still his cousin no matter what. Qin Feiyang looked at Lu Hong and said with a sullen face, I must blame you because you went too easy on him. Lu Jing was stunned. Lu Hong was stunned. The people around were also petrified on the spot. Are you kidding me? Didn't you see that Zhuge Haolong's face was deformed? Didn't you see that Zhuge Haoyu was crippled? You call that going too easy on him? What if you were in his shoes? What would you do? Kill him directly? Do you dare? After all, the other party was from the Zhuge family. Therefore, everyone was speechless. Let's go. Qin Feiyang smiled and left with the two of them. The Zhenbao Pavilion was not far from here. It was only a few dozen meters away. When they reached the front door, the three of them entered the Zhenbao Pavilion without looking back. The 4 guards in front of the door looked at the 3 of them and swallowed their saliva. They even dared to beat up a descendant of the Zhuge family. Either it was their first time in the imperial city, and they were like newborn calves who were not afraid of tigers, or their background was not simple. Brother Haolong, Brother Haoyu, are you all right? When Qin Feiyang and the other 2 entered the Zhenbao Pavilion, the group of rich kids immediately rushed forward and helped the 2 of them up. I'm fine. Zhuge Haolong waved his hand and stared at the door of the Zhenbao Pavilion. His eyes flashed with a cold light. Humph. The woman in purple snorted coldly and turned to leave. A young man in white hurriedly said, Sister Feifei, where are you going? Brother Haolong is injured because of you. Aren't you going to comfort him? That's because he's useless. Also, don't look for me in the future. I, Wang Feifei, don't need a useless man like you. The woman in purple said coldly and quickly disappeared into the crowd. Stupid woman, I swear that I will make you pay the price. This time, Zhuge Haolong hated Lu Hong even more. He opened a teleportation door and walked in with a gloomy face with Zhuge Haoyu. What should we do? The rest of the people looked at each other. After being humiliated so badly, Zhuge Haolong will definitely not let it go. Let's go to the Zhenbao Pavilion first. There will be a good show later. That makes sense. The group of people looked at each other and smiled. They then rushed to the Zhenbao Pavilion. Although they were all complimenting Zhuge Haolong on the surface, they were all hiding something in their hearts. To put it bluntly, they were just pretending to obey. Young masters, young mistress, what do you need? In the Zhenbao Pavilion, a woman in red walked in front of Qin Feiyang and the other 2 and asked politely with a smile. The people in the Zhenbao Pavilion also knew about what happened outside. They looked at Qin Feiyang and the other two with curiosity. Qin Feiyang smiled and said, "I want to see Sun Dahai." Sun Dahai was the manager here, commonly known as Elder Sunday. The woman in red was stunned. They wanted to see the manager as soon as they entered. Could it be that these three people really had a big background? But she more or less knew a little about the rich and powerful disciples in the imperial city. She didn't seem to know these three people in front of her. "Then please wait for a moment. I will go and ask Elder Sun to come out." But she didn't ask more. She bowed to Qin Feiyang and the other two and turned to leave quickly. Qin Feiyang and the other two also strolled around the hall. The items sold in the hall were basically very ordinary things. But sometimes, if one was lucky, they would encounter one or two valuable treasures. "Come over and take a look. This thing looks very strange." "What is it?" Suddenly. Chapter 1206. Qin Feiyang and the other two looked at each other and walked over curiously. "It's them. Get out of the way." Seeing the three of them coming, the crowd immediately retreated to the sides. They even dared to beat up the people of the Zhuge family. What else did they not dare to do? Therefore, everyone was very scared. The three of them walked to a counter casually. The counter was made of transparent glass. They could clearly see that there was a jade box inside. The jade box was the size of an adult's palm. It was very ordinary and simple. And in the jade box, there was a colorful fruit. The fruit was about the size of an egg. It was bright and colorful, but because the counter was closed, there was no fruit fragrance. "What is this? I've never seen it before." "I've never seen it before, but it looks delicious." Someone whispered beside him. "Why does it look familiar?" Suddenly, a murmur sounded. Everyone looked over and found that it was Qin Feiyang who spoke. An old man with white hair asked curiously, "Little brother, do you know what this is?" Qin Feiyang smiled and said, "Shouldn't you ask the staff here?" Behind the counter, a young woman stood. Hearing Qin Feiyang's words, she apologized. "Young master, I'm sorry, we Treasure Pavilion don't know what this is." "Why are you selling it if you don't know?" Everyone was puzzled. "This fruit is not for sale. It's just for exhibition. But if anyone can recognize this fruit and tell us the truth, we Treasure Pavilion will reward you handsomely." The young woman smiled and said with a sweet smile. "Reward what?" someone asked. 1 billion gold coins. The young woman said. Hearing this, everyone immediately stared at the fruit and racked their brains to remember. 1 billion gold coins for Qin Feiyang was just a small profit, but for most of the people here, it was a huge sum of money. So everyone wanted to get this reward. However, no matter how they thought, there was no information about this fruit in their memory. "What is this?" Lu Zheng also lowered his head and pondered. "I remember now." Lu Hong's eyes suddenly trembled. She transmitted her voice to Qin Feiyang. "Do you remember the 3 fruits you obtained in the Blue Sea?" His words awakened the dreamer. Qin Feiyang suddenly realized. That was right. Back in the Azure Sea, he had followed Wang Zicheng to an island and discovered a ruin. In the ruins, he found a jade box. The 3 fruits in the box were exactly the same as the one in front of him. I was already surprised that he couldn't find any information about this fruit, but I didn't expect that even the people of Precious Treasure Pavilion don't know about it. It seems that this fruit is truly extraordinary. Lu Hong thought to herself. Qin Feiyang nodded without leaving a trace. No matter what, he had to get this fruit today. "May I ask which friend is looking for me?" At this moment, an aged voice sounded, and a white-haired old man walked out from one of the doors. It was Sun Dahai. Qin Feiyang faintly smiled as he led Lu Hong and the other 2 to greet them. Sun Dahai glanced at the 3 of them, and his pupils shrank slightly. What a strong cultivation. He cupped his hands and smiled. "May I ask who the 3 of you are?" Qin Feiyang smiled and said, "Nameless juniors, not worth mentioning." "Who are you kidding?" Sun Dahai muttered secretly. They even dared to beat up the people of the Zhuge family. How could they be nameless juniors? But as the steward of Precious Treasure Pavilion in the first district, he naturally knew what to ask and what not to ask. He smiled slightly and asked politely, "May I ask why you are looking for me?" Qin Feiyang was about to speak, but suddenly there was a violent shout from outside. The woman who injured my 2 young masters, I give you 3 breaths to get out here. This voice was very hoarse and filled with a piercing chill. Judging from this voice, it seems to be the steward of the Zhuge family. The Zhuge family will not let this go. People started to discuss softly. The good-for-nothing young masters who were with Zhuge Haolong were also in the hall. When they heard the voice of the Zhuge family's steward, they looked at Qin Feiyang and the other 2 and sneered. Lu Zheng said angrily. After beating up the young ones, the old ones are here. There is no end to this. I will go and take care of him. Sun Dahai's eyes flashed as he sent a telepathic message. The 3 of you, the Zhuge family is not to be trifled with. I suggest that we turn big problems into small ones, and small ones into nothing. Just them. Lu Zheng smiled disdainfully, turned around, and strode into Precious Treasure Pavilion. Interesting. Sun Dahai looked at Lu Zheng's back, and then looked at Qin Feiyang and Lu Hong. He realized that there was no trace of nervousness on their faces, and this piqued his interest. Outside, an old man in black stood in the middle of the street. His gaze was arrogant and overbearing. Behind him stood a group of black armored guards. There were a total of 15 of them, and all of them had arrogant postures. They were here to seek revenge, so the 2 victims, Zhuge Haolong and Zhuge Haoyu, were naturally here as well. With the old man in black and a group of black armored guards, the 2 of them were confident enough to flaunt their prowess and look down on everyone. Lu Zheng stepped out of the door and scanned the group of people. He sneered. You came really quickly. As an 8-star battle saint, he could see through the cultivation of these people at a glance. The old man in black, a 9-star battle saint. As a steward, one needed management ability, not cultivation. Therefore, the steward's cultivation was usually not very strong. As for the black armored guards, their strength was between 8-star and 9-star battle saint. The old man in black shouted, "Cut the crap and hand over that bitch." Lu Zheng's face turned cold and he said, "You'd best clean your mouth for me. Impudent. How dare you speak to me with such an attitude? Do you know who I am?" The old man in black roared. The corner of Lu Zheng's mouth lifted. He said proudly, "Then do you know who I am?" Although the Zhuge family was a feudal lord, it was not worth mentioning compared to his Lu family. Looks like you're not just arrogant. But let me tell you, if you don't hand over that woman, you can forget about leaving here today. The old man in black waved his hand, and the 15 black armored guards immediately stepped forward and blocked the door of the treasure pavilion. With just you dregs? Lu Zheng chuckled. Your cultivation is very strong. Even I can't see through it, but so what? My Zhuge family doesn't lack powerhouses. As long as I send a message, a large number of powerhouses will immediately come to support us. At that time, it won't be as simple as just handing over that woman. You and the other person will die. So you'd better be sensible. The old man in black sneered. The other person was naturally Qin Feiyang. Haha. Lu Zheng threw his head back and laughed. The old man in black's eyes flashed with murderous intent. He laughed sinisterly. Looks like you refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. Then he took out an image crystal and prepared to call for reinforcements. Actually, before coming, he had asked Zhuge Haolong and Lu Zheng what their cultivation was. After all, only by knowing yourself and your enemy can you win every battle. But with the pitiful strength of Zhuge Haolong and the other 2, how could they see through the cultivation of Qin Feiyang and the other 2? After thinking for a long time, they still couldn't figure it out. Seeing that they couldn't tell the other's cultivation, the old man in black asked about Qin Feiyang and the other 2's ages. Of course, Zhuge Haolong and Lu Zheng didn't know either. They only said that they were about the same age as them. This was indeed true. Let's not talk about Lu Zheng. Let's talk about Qin Feiyang first. Zhuge Mingyang was older than Qin Feiyang. And as Zhuge Mingyang's cousin, Zhuge Haolong and Qin Feiyang's age naturally wouldn't be too different. Knowing this, the old man in black was relieved. Sure, the other 3 were definitely not strong. Because they were too young. How strong could these 3 young people be? At most, they were battle masters. Therefore, he only brought a group of ordinary guards to avenge the humiliation of the 2 young masters. He originally thought that with his and the guard's strength, they could easily take down the other three, but when he saw it with his own eyes, he realized that he was very wrong. He couldn't see through their cultivation. They must be battle sages. But he wasn't worried at all. In his opinion, it wasn't too late to call for reinforcements now. He also didn't believe that the other party would really dare to kill them. He wasn't blindly confident. In the imperial capital, other than the current emperor, no one dared to touch the Zhuge family. Even the state preceptor and old Qin had to ask the emperor in advance if they wanted to touch the Zhuge family. However, he had greatly underestimated Lu Zheng's identity and methods. As a direct descendant of the Lu family, how could he be afraid of a mere Zhuge family? Not to mention killing a butler. Even if he killed Zhuge Mingyang, the so-called #1 demon, no one would dare to do anything to him. Whoosh! Just as the old man in black was recovering the image crystal, Lu Zheng swept to the front of the old man in black like a ghost. Be careful! The dozen or so guards were startled as they shouted. The old man in black's pupils shrank, and he immediately retreated in horror. But with his cultivation, how could he escape from Lu Zheng's palm? Lu Zheng grabbed his neck and said with a sinister smile, "There's no discussion about killing you. Go to hell and repent slowly." "No!" The old man in black roared in extreme panic. Crack! But at the same time, Lu Zheng squeezed his 5 fingers and directly broke the old man in black's neck. He died on the spot. What? He really killed him? Everyone was dumbfounded. This butler had followed Zhuge Wuhou for many years, and was deeply trusted by Zhuge Wuhou. Although his status was not as high as those direct descendants, he was still an important figure in the Zhuge family. But this person actually killed him just like that. He was openly challenging the dignity of the Zhuge family. Zhuge Haolong, Zhuge Haoyu, and the group of guards were also dumbfounded. They did not expect this person to be so bold that he even dared to kill their butler. But just as everyone was shocked, Lu Zheng's gaze shifted to Zhuge Haolong and Zhuge Haoyu. What does he want to do? Does he want to kill Zhuge Haolong and Zhuge Haoyu too? Everyone was surprised. Lu Zheng grinned and said, "I spared your lives just now. You should cherish it." You. The two of them were so scared that their faces turned pale. Their bodies trembled, and there was even the smell of urine. "You guys pissed your pants." Lu Zheng was stunned. He looked at the crotch of the two of them, and saw that there were indeed water stains. It was not their fault. Although their family background was not ordinary, their personal strength was not that great. Moreover, it was common knowledge that these good-for-nothing scums, although they always acted like tyrants, were actually cowards. Chapter 1207. Young Master Haolong, Young Master Haoyu, leave quickly. Seeing that the situation was not good, the 15 black-armored guards quickly rushed to the front of Zhuge Haolong and Haoyu. They stood in a row and stared at Lu Zheng as if they were facing a great enemy. As experienced guards, their foresight and temperament were naturally incomparable to Zhuge Haolong and Haoyu. Seeing that Lu Zheng directly killed the manager without even blinking, they realized that they had met a fierce person this time. And there was nothing that such a person could not do. Buzz. Zhuge Haolong immediately opened a portal, but the two of them did not enter. "Go in quickly." One of the guards urged impatiently. "We also want to go in, but our legs are not listening to us." Zhuge Haolong and Haoyu were so anxious that they were about to cry. "You're so scared that your legs are weak?" Lu Zheng was stunned. He shook his head and sneered. They were indeed useless. "Damn it." The guard cursed. He turned and carried the two of them toward the portal. Swoosh. But suddenly, a figure appeared in front of the portal. It was Lu Zheng. So fast. The guard's expressions changed. Boom. Lu Zheng waved his hand, and the portal instantly shattered. Then he pointed his index finger in the air. 15 battle auras appeared and disappeared between the eyebrows of the 15 guards at lightning speed. Accompanied by a series of screams, the 15 of them died on the spot. "Don't kill us. I beg you, please spare us." Zhuge Haolong and Haoyu were immediately paralyzed with fear. They knelt on the ground and begged endlessly. "I can spare you, but you have to bark a few times and let me hear it." Lu Zheng teased. "Woof." The two of them immediately barked like dogs, and the sound echoed throughout the entire street. The crowd burst into laughter. They did not expect that the dignified direct descendants of the Zhuge family would be so spineless. They immediately started barking like dogs when asked to. This was simply a disgrace to the Zhuge family. If old man Zhuge were to see you guys like this, he might die from anger. So, I might as well be a good person and send you to the afterlife. Lu Zheng smiled contemptuously. He waved his hand, and a wave of battle aura appeared and rushed toward the two of them. No! The two of them screamed miserably. But to no avail. The battle chi was like a terrifying blade, instantly engulfing the two of them. Blood splattered everywhere. Killed. Everyone was dumbfounded. The surroundings also fell into a dead silence. Killing the housekeeper and those guards was already beyond their imagination. But he actually killed Zhuge Haolong and Zhuge Haolong? This was too crazy. One had to know. Both of them were direct descendants. Their positions in the Zhuge family were much more important than that of the housekeeper. Did he know what he was doing? Did he know how big of a mistake he had made? But for this. Lu Zheng smiled indifferently and turned to enter the treasure pavilion. The moment they saw Lu Zheng enter, the people in the treasure pavilion all retreated to a corner, their eyes filled with fear. Those silk pants were even more terrified. They hid behind the crowd and didn't even dare to breathe loudly. This person even dared to kill Zhuge Haolong and Zhuge Haoyu, let alone them. Walking in front of Qin Feiyang and Lu Hong, Lu Zheng chuckled and said, "Now no one will bother us." Qin Feiyang and Lu Hong also smiled faintly. Sun Dahai's pupils constricted. They could still be so calm after killing the Zhuge family's people. Looking at the background of these three people, they were not ordinary people. Sun Dahai smiled and said, "The three of you. Why don't we go to the VIP room to talk? I just killed the Zhuge family's people, and you're bringing us to the VIP room. Aren't you afraid of the Zhuge family's revenge?" Lu Zheng joked. Sun Dahai smiled and said, "Our treasure pavilion doesn't care about grudges. We only do business." Haha, Lu Zheng laughed loudly and said, "Then lead the way." On the second floor, VIP room, Sun Dahai pushed the door open and walked to the tea table. He stretched out his hand and said with a smile, "The three of you, please take a seat." Qin Feiyang sat down and said with a faint smile, "Let's not talk about small talk. Let's get to the point." Sun Dahai was stunned. He was thinking about how to find out the identities of these three people, but he did not expect Qin Feiyang to see through him. Now he was embarrassed to ask anymore. Sun Dahai shook his head and said with a smile, "Little brother, you're a straightforward person. All right, what do you need?" Qin Feiyang said, "A portal and medicinal materials for the battle chi pill." "How much do you need?" Sun Dahai asked. Qin Feiyang said, "Everything." "What?" Sun Dahai was petrified. He wondered if he had heard wrongly. Qin Feiyang said calmly, "I want as much as you have in your treasure pavilion. I don't care about the price. I only have one request. Hurry." Lu Zheng had killed the butler and Zhuge Haolong. He would definitely enrage the Zhuge family. It would not be long before more people came, and they would not be ordinary people. Therefore they had to leave Empire City as soon as possible. "Are you sure you want everything?" Sun Dahai still found it hard to accept. The treasure pavilion in the first district was the headquarters of the Great Qin Empire. Naturally, they had a lot of medicinal materials for portals and battle chi pills. Although the three people in front of him were powerful, it did not mean that they had a lot of money. Frankly speaking, he doubted whether the three of them had that much money. "You're so annoying. Just go and prepare. Why are you asking so many questions? If you can't make the decision, get someone else to talk to us." Lu Zheng said impatiently. Sun Dahai looked at the three of them deeply and nodded. "All right, I'll get someone to prepare it. Guards." The door opened and a guard walked in. Sun Dahai ordered, "Go and get all the portals and medicinal materials for the battle chi pill." "Yes." The guard replied respectfully. He glanced at Qin Feiyang and the other two, then turned and ran out. "How long will it take?" Lu Hong asked. Sun Dahai smiled and said, "It won't take long because the medicinal materials in the treasure pavilion have been categorized in advance. Each type is stored in a separate Qingquan bag. They can go and get it. Lu Hong nodded and said, in addition, we also want the fruit on display in the hall. Sun Dahai was surprised and said, do the three of you know what fruit it is? Lu Zheng glanced at Sun Dahai and also looked at Qin Feiyang and Lu Hong suspiciously. I don't know. Lu Hong shook her head. If you don't know, what are you going to do? Sun Dahai was suspicious. Lu Hong said calmly, I just think it's very interesting and want to study it. Study it? Sun Dahai looked at Lu Hong and suddenly smiled. He said apologetically, I'm sorry, we really don't intend to sell that fruit. You can name any price. Lu Hong said. Sun Dahai's eyes flashed. Name any price? Did this mean that the fruit was extraordinary? He smiled calmly and said, Miss, this is not a matter of price. The pavilion master personally gave the order. I dare not make a decision on my own. In fact, it was an excuse to test Qin Feiyang and the other two. How could this be hidden from Qin Feiyang's eyes? He waved his hand, and a pill appeared on the coffee table. He looked at Sun Dahai and said, I like to do business with honest people. Sun Dahai smiled embarrassedly, and lowered his head to look at the pill on the coffee table. He suddenly stood up, his eyes full of surprise. That was actually a potential pill. Could this person be? He suddenly raised his head and looked at Qin Feiyang, ready to speak. Qin Feiyang said calmly, some words don't have to be said. It's fine as long as you understand it in your heart. Phew. Sun Dahai took a deep breath and returned to his seat. He stretched out his hands, crossed his fingers and said, 10 potential pills and I'll give you that fruit. Why don't you say 100? Lu Hong sneered. How much was 10 potential pills worth? To think that this old man dared to say that. Sun Dahai smiled and said, Miss, you have to understand that something that even the treasure pavilion doesn't know about is definitely not ordinary. That's why it's worth this price. Perhaps I've even underestimated its value. Lu Hong said, then you have to understand that we can openly snatch it away without paying a single cent. Sun Dahai frowned. That's reasonable. We're not even afraid of the state preceptor and the current emperor. Why would we be afraid of a mere treasure pavilion? Just you wait. I'll go and snatch it now. Lu Zheng chuckled, then stood up and walked outside. Wait. Sun Dahai's expression changed. He hurriedly stood up and grabbed Lu Zheng. He looked at Qin Feiyang and smiled apologetically. Brother Qin, we've known each other for so long. Can you give me some face? Don't cause trouble here. Only now did he remember that this guy in front of him was a lawless person. Qin Feiyang smiled and said, then tell me, how many potential pills do you want? Sun Dahai was hesitant. He really couldn't estimate the value of the fruit. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly and said, how about this? I'll give you 20 potential pills. Take it as the payment for the teleportation gate, herbs and fruits. What do you think? 20 pills. Sun Dahai's eyes lit up. Lu Zheng frowned and said, hurry up and state your position. There's a limit to my patience. Sun Dahai pondered for a while and let go of Lu Zheng. He turned to look at Qin Feiyang and nodded. Deal. Qin Feiyang immediately went to the ancient castle. Lu Hong smiled and said, Elder son, I think it's a little inappropriate for you to ask for potential pills now. What do you mean? Sun Dahai was puzzled. Everyone knows that only we can refine potential pills. When you auction these potential pills, won't the state preceptor and the emperor know that you're colluding with us? Lu Hong said. Oh, I see. Sun Dahai smiled and waved his hand. This isn't a big problem. When they ask, I'll say that they're leftovers from the past. After all, before your identities were exposed, I've had many transactions with you. They won't be able to find out at all. Smart. Lu Hong gave him a thumbs up and said meaningfully, but you're committing the crime of deceiving the emperor. If it's leaked, I'm afraid you'll lose your life. If you don't say it, and I don't say it, who will know? Moreover, it's precisely because you've fallen out with His Majesty that there's a shortage of potential pills. That's why I can take the opportunity to auction them for a good price. Sun Dahai chuckled and didn't care at all. Indeed, all businessmen are evil. Lu Hong secretly despised him. Chapter 1208. Swish. At this time, Qin Feiyang appeared from the ancient castle, holding a qiankuan bag in his hand. Looking at the qiankuan bag, Sun Dahai's eyes lit up. Qin Feiyang shook his head with a smile, and directly threw it to Sun Dahai. Sun Dahai hurriedly checked it. However, his eyebrows instantly furrowed. Are you not satisfied? Qin Feiyang asked with a smile. Sun Dahai raised his eyebrows and said, This old man remembers that you were able to refine pills with 4 pill patterns in the past, but why do these potential pills only have 2 pill patterns? Not to mention 4 pill veins, I can even refine a pill with 7 pill veins. However, the Imperial Preceptor and the Emperor are not fools. If there are too many pill patterns, it will definitely arouse their suspicions. So it's better to keep a low profile. Moreover, for the people in the imperial capital, it doesn't matter how many pill patterns there are. What's important is that there are potential pills to auction. Qin Feiyang said with a faint smile. 7 pill patterns. Sun Dahai's eyes trembled. After being in charge of the treasure pavilion for so many years, he had never seen a pill with 7 pill patterns. However, Qin Feiyang's words made sense. At this time, for the people in the imperial capital, even if there were no pill patterns, it would still cause a mad scramble. Dong. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. Sun Dahai hurriedly put away the qiankuan bag, sat on the chair and shouted, Come in. The door opened and the guard strode in, holding no less than a dozen qiankuan bags in his hand. Elder son, the teleportation portal and battle chi pills medicinal materials are all here. If it's not enough, I can go to other districts to get more. The guard placed the dozen qiankuan bags one by one on the tea table. Sun Dahai looked at Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang shook his head. Sun Dahai understood and waved his hand. No need, you can leave. Oh right, go and bring up the 5 colored fruit in the hall on the first floor. Yes. The guard bowed and left, closing the door. Sun Dahai pointed to the qiankuan bag on the table and said with a smile, You guys check. Qin Feiyang said, There's no need. Put it away. Lu Hong nodded. With a wave of her jade-like hand, all the cosmos bags on the table instantly disappeared. After waiting for a while, the guard came back with the fruit. Qin Feiyang put away the fruit and stood up. He cupped his hands and smiled. Then I'll take my leave first. Yes. Sun Dahai nodded, but he suddenly thought of something and said, Brother Qin, there's something I don't know if I should say. What? Qin Feiyang asked. Although this old man knows that as an outsider, I am not qualified to speak too much, this old man still wishes to say this. You and His Majesty are father and son after all. Sun Dahai sighed. Qin Feiyang's eyes turned cold. Seeing this, Sun Dahai hurriedly smiled and said, All right, take it as if this old man didn't say anything. If you have the chance in the past, come visit more often. Of course, what he was thinking about was not Qin Feiyang, but the potential pill in Qin Feiyang's bag. Qin Feiyang opened a teleportation door, and was about to leave with Lu Hong and Lu Zheng. Where is the thief who killed my son? Suddenly, a violent shout exploded in the sky above the treasure pavilion. Sun Dahai's expression changed as he hurriedly said, It's Zhuge Jing. Leave quickly. Who is Zhuge Jing? Lu Hong was suspicious. Lu Zheng smiled and said, Zhuge Jing is Zhuge Wuho's younger brother, and also Zhuge Haolong and Zhuge Haoyu's father. Then what's his cultivation level? Lu Hong asked. I don't know about that. Lu Zheng shrugged and looked at Sun Dahai. Sun Dahai said in a deep voice, Zhuge Jing is very strong. He's a 9-star battle saint, and is only 1 step away from the War Emperor. He's just a 9-star battle saint. It's not worth mentioning. Lu Zheng smiled disdainfully. Lu Hong also smiled faintly but suddenly frowned and said, No, I also felt an emperor's aura. Qin Feiyang said, Let's go out and take a look. If his cultivation level is not good, we'll just eliminate him. Interesting. Lu Zheng chuckled. This little cousin of his was becoming more and more to his liking. The 3 of them walked out of the VIP room one after another, and walked toward the door. Even the Zhuge family is so disdainful. After all these years, how much has this kid grown? Sun Dahai looked at the backs of Qin Feiyang and the other 2 in disbelief. 30 years in the east, 30 years in the west. Don't bully the young for being poor. This sentence was vividly reflected on Qin Feiyang. He also prepared to go out and take a look. But after thinking about it, it was better not to interfere in this matter, lest he invite trouble to himself. Back to Qin Feiyang. He walked out of the VIP room and entered the corridor. Seeing that there was no one around, he stopped and asked Dan Wangkai to come out. What's wrong? Dan Wangkai looked at him suspiciously. Qin Feiyang said, change your appearance a little and go out to kill people. Zhuge Jing had brought a combat emperor with him. If they really wanted to kill him, they would definitely need Dan Wangkai's help. When the Grand Master scanned the battlefield with his immortal will in the Demon Dragon Mountains, he also saw Dan Wangkai, so Dan Wangkai naturally could not show his true appearance. I see. Dan Wangkai nodded his head in realization. He took an illusory form pill and turned into a middle-aged man. Then he followed behind Qin Feiyang, hiding his cultivation, and walked up the stairs to the door. At the same time, in the sky above the street outside, a middle-aged man in a luxurious robe stood proudly. His energy was so strong that the people on the street below could not breathe. He was Zhuge Jing. At this moment, his face was full of anger and killing intent. Beside him stood an old man. Although he was old, he was glowing red and his body was strong. His long red hair was like flames and his aura was unfathomable. At the same time, his eyes were also filled with a strong killing intent. Behind the two of them stood a group of guards. All of them had cold expressions and sharp gazes, as if they were gods of death. The aura emitted by these guards was much stronger than the 15 guards that the butler had brought. Their cultivation level was basically between 1-star and 3-star battle saints. It could be said that this lineup was very strong. But when Qin Feiyang walked out of the treasure pavilion and saw the group of people, a trace of disdain appeared in his eyes. So it's him. Lu Zheng slowly waved his fan, looked at the red-haired old man, and muttered with a smile. Who is he? Lu Hong asked secretly. The Zhuge family has 10 elders, all of whom have the cultivation level of a combat emperor. And this one is ranked 10th. Judging from his aura, he should have just broken through to 1-star combat emperor not long ago. Lu Zheng smiled faintly. 1-star combat emperor. I can crush him with one finger. Dan Wangkai smiled coldly. Lu Zheng glanced at him and said faintly, don't boast. You're only one level higher than him. Whether I'm boasting or not, you'll know later. Dan Wangkai sneered. Lu Zheng was stunned, then shook his head and smiled. His eyes were filled with anticipation. Which one of you killed my 2 sons? Zhuge Jing looked down and scanned Qin Feiyang and the other 3. The killing intent in his eyes was undisguised. Him. Lu Zheng pointed at Qin Feiyang without changing his expression. The surrounding crowd, as well as the 4 guards in front of the treasure pavilion, had their faces twitching. How could there be such a shameless person who blamed others without blushing and his heart skipping a beat? But everyone knew that the two of them had a close relationship, so it didn't matter who took the blame. Humph. Don't talk nonsense. Although we weren't there before, we've already heard that you're the one who killed Haolong and Haoyu. Zhuge Jing's face was gloomy. Then why did you ask? Can't you just do it? You're really bored. Lu Zheng rolled his eyes. How dare you? Do you know who you're talking to now? Zhuge Jing shouted angrily. Lu Zheng said, then do you know who you're talking to? Zhuge Jing was about to go crazy. He shouted, do you know who I am? Lu Zheng said disdainfully. Then do you know who I am? Zhuge Jing said angrily. I'm Zhuge Jing, the younger brother of Zhuge Wuho. How dare you kill my sons? You're courting death. I'm Zhuge Jing's uncle. You'll be struck by lightning if you dare to scold me. Lu Zheng grinned. The surrounding people's faces turned red. This kid was really not afraid of death. If he said that he was Zhuge Jing's uncle, wouldn't that mean that he was scolding Zhuge Wuho as well? Bastard! Take them down! Zhuge Jing shouted. Wait! The red-haired old man suddenly reached out and stopped the murderous guards. He looked at Qin Feiyang and the other 3 and said in a deep voice, how should I address the 4 of you? They dared to kill the people of the Zhuge family on the street and tease Zhuge Jing in public. They must have a powerful background. Therefore, In order to avoid provoking people that they should not provoke, it was better to ask first. Lu Zheng rolled his eyes and grinned. My surname is Yu and my name is Dad. You can figure it out yourself. Your surname is Dad. The red-haired old man frowned. The others were also thinking. But soon someone could not help but laugh. Your surname? Dad. Isn't that your father? Bastard. The red-haired old man also understood. He immediately became angry and said, I've already been very polite, but you actually took advantage of me. You deserve to be killed. As soon as he finished speaking, the rolling emperor's aura poured down like a waterfall and imprisoned Qin Feiyang and the other two. The Zhuge family is the one who deserves to be killed. Qin Feiyang's eyes were filled with murderous intent. He shouted, Don't leave a single one alive. Kill them all. Yes, sir. Dan Wangkai responded respectfully. A cold light flashed in his eyes, and he rushed toward Zhuge Jing and the others like a bolt of lightning. Zhuge Jing and the others immediately looked at Dan Wangkai. A mere Zhuge family dares to provoke my young master. You really don't know what's good for you. Dan Wangkai smiled coldly. His emperor's aura exploded and rushed toward the group of people like a raging wave. Combat Emperor. And he's stronger than me. The red-haired old man's eyes widened. Boom. But then, an even more shocking scene appeared. Dan Wangkai's body shook, and an even more powerful aura burst out of his body. How is this possible? This time even Lu Zheng could not remain calm, because Dan Wangkai's cultivation had soared to a 4-star combat emperor in an instant. We've underestimated their strength. Run. The red-haired old man's expression changed as he roared. Zhuge Jing and the group of guards were scared silly. They never thought that the other party had hidden such a terrifying expert. Run. Dan Wangkai smiled disdainfully. His big hand grabbed the air, and his battle chi rolled out. A giant hand that covered the sky instantly appeared. The giant hand broke through the air, emitting a great pressure. It grabbed the red-haired old man, Zhuge Jing, and the group of guards in its hand. Then, Dan Wangkai's 5 fingers suddenly clenched. Boom. Ah. Immediately, accompanied by screams, the bodies of Zhuge Jing and the others were crushed by the giant hand. Blood stained the sky. Chapter 1209. So strong. Everyone was dumbfounded. Killing everyone in an instant. What kind of heaven-defying strength was this? But what shocked everyone the most was the courage of Qin Feiyang and his group. Not only did they kill Zhuge Haolong and Zhuge Haoyu, but they also killed Zhuge Jing and the 10 clan elders. One had to know. These people were all important figures of the Zhuge family. Especially the 10 clan elders. Even Zhuge Wuhou himself had to respect them. However, these people killed them without any hesitation, not putting the Zhuge family in their eyes at all. Everyone was wondering who these people were. Let's go. Under everyone's gaze, Qin Feiyang opened the portal, said something to Lu Hong and the other two, and then turned around and walked in without looking back. You want to leave just like that after killing my Zhuge family's people? Suddenly, a violent roar sounded. Following closely, a purple-robed young man broke through the air like lightning and landed in the sky above the treasure pavilion. It's Zhuge Mingyang. I didn't expect to alarm the #1 evildoer in the capital. Everyone's heart trembled. But Qin Feiyang had already entered the portal. Lu Hong and Lu Zheng had also entered the portal. Only Dan Wangkai was still outside. Hearing Zhuge Mingyang's voice, Dan Wangkai looked up, murderous intent flashing in his eyes. Qin Feiyang said indifferently, Don't worry about him. Dan Wangkai smiled coldly, turned around and stepped into the portal. Don't even think about leaving. Zhuge Mingyang was furious. With a wave of his hand, a wave of battle chi rolled out and blasted toward the portal. Don't overestimate yourself. Dan Wangkai's cold voice sounded in the portal. The next moment, a vast emperor's aura emerged and rushed over, annihilating the battle chi in an instant. The emperor's aura rushed toward Zhuge Mingyang. Boom. Zhuge Mingyang was immediately blasted away, blood spurting out of his mouth. A clown. Disdainful laughter came from the teleportation gate. Then Qin Feiyang and the others disappeared, and the teleportation gate disappeared as well. So strong. Zhuge Mingyang's eyes trembled. Not long ago, he had received news that someone had killed Zhuge Haolong and Zhuge Haoyu, so he had rushed over to take a look. But who would have thought that the other party actually had a battle emperor? Furthermore, judging from the emperor's might, he was not a 1- or 2-star combat emperor. But who was it? The Zhuge family's fame spread far and wide, and their status far surpassed the other martial marquis government. Who would have the guts to kill a member of the Zhuge family? Could it be? Suddenly, a figure appeared in Zhuge Mingyang's mind as he muttered, "Is it really him?" Whoosh! At this moment, another figure descended. "Greetings, Commander." Everyone bowed respectfully. That was right. This man was the commander of the Kirin army. He had also received the news and rushed over to take a look. What's going on? The commander of the Kirin army glanced at the bloody scene below, frowned slightly, and asked Zhuge Mingyang. Zhuge Mingyang said in a deep voice, "My second uncle, 10th grandpa, Haolong and the rest have all been killed here." The pupils of the Kirin army's commander constricted, and the first thing that came to his mind was Qin Feiyang, because in the entire Great Qin Empire, only Qin Feiyang had the guts to do so. Who did it? He asked calmly. "I don't know, a few unfamiliar faces." Zhuge Mingyang shook his head and said coldly, "But I think in this world other than him, no one else dares to be so arrogant." The eyes of the Kirin army's commander flashed. The person that Zhuge Mingyang was talking about was obviously Qin Feiyang. The Kirin army's commander glanced at the crowd below and said, "Who can tell me the details of the situation?" There were many people below who had witnessed the entire process. For a moment, everyone was talking at once, and there was an uproar. Soon, the commander of the Kirin army had a rough idea of what had happened, and he shouted, "Sun Dahai, come out now." Sun Dahai ran out of the treasure pavilion in a hurry and bowed. "Greetings, Commander, young Master Zhuge." The commander of the Kirin army said, "It happened in the treasure pavilion. Why didn't you stop it?" "Commander, you are wrong. It didn't happen in the treasure pavilion. It happened on the street outside the treasure pavilion, and the treasure pavilion has no right to intervene. Moreover, those people are cruel, and I can't do anything." Sun Dahai said apologetically. These were all polite words, and everyone could tell. Zhuge Mingyang said angrily, "But they entered the treasure pavilion." "I don't deny that. But they entered the treasure pavilion to buy things. The treasure pavilion is open for business, and we can't reject them just because they have some grudges with the Zhuge family." Sun Dahai laughed. The meaning of his words was obvious. Although the Zhuge family was powerful now, but what the treasure pavilion wanted to do was none of his business. Zhuge Mingyang clenched his fists and said in a low voice, "You have to understand, this person is very likely to be him." "Who is it?" Sun Dahai asked. Zhuge Mingyang said, "You know it in your heart." Sun Dahai shook his head. "I really don't understand, young Master Zhuge, please enlighten me." "Qin Feiyang." Zhuge Mingyang said word by word, and every word was as sharp as a blade. What? Everyone's eyes trembled. Sun Dahai also raised his eyebrows and smiled. Young Master Zhuge's imagination is really admirable. "I'm not joking with you," Zhuge Mingyang said in a low voice. "I'm not joking either. I personally received them just now, and I didn't find anyone similar to Qin Feiyang." Sun Dahai said. Zhuge Mingyang said angrily, "Don't you know that there's something called the phantom elixir in this world? Young Master Zhuge, I respect you, but please don't insult my intelligence. I've been in charge of the treasure pavilion for so many years. How could I not know about the phantom elixir? However, my treasure pavilion has thousands of customers every day. I can't use the Heaven's Eye stone to test their identities one by one. Can I? You have to know that this is a great disrespect to the customers." Sun Dahai said lightly. Zhuge Mingyang's face was as dark as water. Sun Dahai glanced at Zhuge Mingyang and the commander of the Kirin army and smiled. "There are still many things waiting for me to deal with in the treasure pavilion. If there's nothing else, I'll go do it." "Go." The commander of the Kirin army waved his hand. Sun Dahai smiled and turned around to enter the treasure pavilion. His eyes flashed with a bright light. Originally, he wanted to auction off the potential elixir immediately. But now, it seemed that he had to wait for the news to die down. Otherwise, it would definitely arouse Zhuge Mingyang's suspicion. Outside the city, in the sky above a dense forest, Lu Hong looked at Qin Feiyang and asked, "Will Sun Dahai betray us?" Qin Feiyang smiled. "Don't worry, if he betrays us, he won't let us leave the treasure pavilion." At the same time, Lu Zheng looked at Dan Wangkai and asked in surprise, "What happened to your cultivation?" A 2-star combat emperor instantly rose to a 4-star combat emperor, an increase of 2 small realms. From what he knew, there was no such heaven-defying battle art in this world. Dan Wangkai turned a deaf ear and stood silently beside Qin Feiyang. He deactivated the forbidden technique, and his cultivation returned to a 2-star combat emperor. This made Lu Zheng even more surprised. He smiled and said, "You're not an outsider, what's there to hide? Tell me. Aren't you annoying?" Dan Wangkai looked at him impatiently. "You have character." Lu Zheng chuckled and said, "Actually, even if you don't say it, I can guess that you must have mastered some kind of forbidden technique." Dan Wangkai raised his eyebrows. "Don't forget, I'm a member of the Lu family." Lu Zheng smiled proudly. Dan Wangkai snorted. "Don't forget, even if you're a member of the Lu family, I can kill you with one hand." The smile on Lu Zheng's face froze. This guy really doesn't give me any face. At this moment, Qin Feiyang took out the 5-colored fruit and looked at it carefully. The fruit was like a colorful diamond, bright and dazzling. The rich smell of the fruit assaulted their noses, making them salivate. Dan Wangkai looked at Lu Zheng and said indifferently, "You always say that the Lu family is amazing and awesome, so you should be omnipotent and omniscient, right? Then do you know what this is?" Lu Zheng's face twitched. If he knew, he wouldn't have kept quiet. "Tell me." The Elixir King questioned with an aggressive look in his eyes. Lu Zheng coughed and said, "Although I don't know what it is, I'm sure it's definitely not an ordinary thing." "Do I need you to tell me that?" Dan Wangkai rolled his eyes and said, "Since you don't know, then keep a low profile in the future. Don't always act like you're amazing." "I say, do you think I'm easy to bully?" Lu Zheng raised his eyebrows, his expression full of displeasure. Dan Wangkai said expressionlessly, "I just can't stand your domineering behavior." "Then don't look at me." Lu Zheng waved his hand impatiently. "That's enough. How old are you? Why are you still quarreling?" Qin Feiyang rolled his eyes at them and put away the colorful fruit. Lu Hong suddenly asked, "By the way, why didn't you just kill Zhuge Mingyang?" Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed and he said, "Now is not the time to kill him. Besides, now he is deeply favored by the emperor and the state preceptor, so he must have some trump cards." "For example?" Lu Hong asked. "The state preceptor's killing intent. Back then, old Qin gave me a wisp of killing intent to protect myself, so the state preceptor can naturally give Zhuge Mingyang a wisp of killing intent to protect himself." Qin Feiyang said. Lu Hong nodded in understanding. Buzz. At this moment, Qin Feiyang's image crystal rang. After he took it out, the shadow of the commander of the Kirin army emerged. Looking at the appearance of Qin Feiyang and the others, the commander of the Kirin army immediately frowned and said, "Sure enough, it was you who killed Qin Feiyang and the others." Because Qin Feiyang and the others had not recovered their true appearances yet. "Yes, it was us," Qin Feiyang said lightly. The commander of the Kirin army asked, "Why? Is it because Zhuge Mingyang offended you before?" "I don't take Zhuge Mingyang seriously. I killed them because they deserved to die." Qin Feiyang said. "What did they do to you? Why do you hate them so much?" The commander of the Kirin army was puzzled. They wanted to shake the great Qin dynasty. Killing intent surged in Qin Feiyang's eyes. The eldest prince was the son of Zhuge Wuho and the current empress. If he had not killed the eldest prince back then, the great Qin dynasty would have become the Zhuge family's empire after the eldest prince inherited the throne. Chapter 12:10. Shake the Great Qin Empire. The commander of the Kirin army trembled and asked in disbelief, "Are you joking with me?" Qin Feiyang said, "Do I look like I'm joking? How is that possible?" I've had many interactions with the Zhuge family, and have always followed the rules. Why would I do such a thing? The commander of the Kirin army said. This was something that he found hard to accept. Follow the rules? Humph, there are some things that you don't know. Just you wait. Sooner or later, I'll expose their wild ambitions to the world. By then, you'll know whether what I did today was right or wrong. After Qin Feiyang finished speaking, he directly turned off the image crystal. This person was too loyal to the emperor. Even with the slave seal, he could not control him. If he knew the true identity of the first prince, he would definitely tell the emperor immediately. Therefore, he could not tell him now. Buzz. But in less than 3 breaths, the image crystal vibrated again. Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows and infused his battle qi into it. A figure appeared. He thought it was the commander of the Kirin army again, and said angrily without looking, "Are you done? What's going on?" A suspicious voice sounded. Qin Feiyang was stunned. He looked up and saw Yin Wei. Qin Feiyang said with a smile, "Sorry, I thought it was the commander of the Kirin army. How are things on your side?" "The Grand Tutor is too cautious." Yin Wei sighed deeply and said with a smile, "But now I've successfully entered the law enforcement hall." "The inner hall?" Qin Feiyang asked. "No. But as long as I can enter the law enforcement hall, I'm confident that I can enter the inner hall and become the Grand Tutor's confidant." Yin Wei said with a confident smile. "Be careful. Don't give yourself away." Qin Feiyang smiled. He believed in Yin Wei's ability. "I will. Where do you plan to go next?" Yin Wei asked. "Sea of Reincarnation," Qin Feiyang said. The Sea of Reincarnation was located at the extreme north of the imperial capital. It stretched as far as the eye could see. The environment here was extremely harsh. Strong winds blew and tsunamis surged. Powerful sea beasts could be seen everywhere. Ordinary Xiuzha did not dare to set foot in this area. However, it was precisely in such a place that a village was located. The village was only a little over 100 miles away from the Reincarnation Ocean. Ferocious beasts roamed the vast mountains, but strangely, there was not a single trace of a ferocious beast within a dozen miles of the village. The village wasn't small, but compared to a bustling place like Emperor City, it wasn't that big. More than 2,000 villagers were gathered here. This place could be said to be isolated from the rest of the world, but everyone lived very comfortably. Young and strong men were hunting outside. The elderly, women, and children stayed at home to take care of the house. Everything seemed so peaceful and simple. But at this moment, a middle-aged woman stood at the entrance of the village, gazing into the distant mountains. Her face was filled with worry. The woman was only 35 or 36 years old, but her face was pale, her eyes were empty, and her face was full of wrinkles. She looked like a person in her 50s. Time passed, and the sky gradually darkened. The woman was still standing at the entrance of the village, as if waiting for someone to return. Night finally fell, and the mountain was plunged into darkness. Every household in the village lit up their lanterns. Thud! Suddenly, a series of steady and powerful footsteps sounded from afar. Hearing the footsteps, the woman's empty eyes finally glowed with a touch of light. In the darkness, a middle-aged strong man dressed as a hunter gradually entered the woman's sight. The strong man was burly, at least 9 meters tall, carrying a 2-meter-long bull. His footsteps were steady and powerful. However, he had no cultivation base. That barbarian bull was just an ordinary wild beast. Seeing the strong man, the light in the woman's eyes dissipated, and was replaced by a trace of disappointment. When the strong man saw the woman, he was slightly stunned and asked suspiciously, "Jier's mother, why are you still standing here?" "I'm waiting for Jier." The woman smiled, but her smile was stiff. The strong man was stunned and asked in surprise, "Jier hasn't returned yet?" The woman nodded. The strong man said angrily, "What's that kid doing? He's not young anymore and he's still so immature." The woman shook her head. "It's not Jier's fault. He went out to look for his sister. His sister has been missing for so many days. She must have died under the claws of a ferocious beast. How can he find her?" The strong man sighed. Instantly, the woman was enraged and shouted, "Nonsense! Jeaner can't be dead. She must still be alive. Her expression was filled with pain. The strong man could not bear it and persuaded, "Don't be silly. If she's really not dead, how can she not return after half a month? Get lost right now," the woman shouted. "You don't know what's good for you." The brawny man coldly snorted and carried the bull into the village without looking back. "Jeaner will be fine. Yeah, or we'll definitely find her," the woman muttered to herself and looked at the deep mountains in the night. 2 drops of tears flowed from the corners of her eyes. Roar. In the deathly silent depths of the mountains, the occasional loud roar of a beast could be heard. At a certain mountain stream, a 12 or 13-year-old boy was walking alone. "After father passed away, I only have my sister and mother left. No matter what, I must find my sister." The young boy clenched his hands together and his pitch-black eyes were like black gemstones that shone with a resolute light. 12 or 13 years old was still a child. However, there was a maturity and steadiness on this young boy's face that was different from his peers. Soon, the young boy came to a short mountain and looked up at the peak before climbing up with all his might. Along the way, the thorns cut his skin and blood flowed. However, he did not care at all, and there was a hint of stubbornness in his eyes. Finally, panting heavily, he climbed to the peak of the mountain and stood at the edge of the cliff. Looking at the night sky in the distance, he murmured, "Sister, where did you go? Do you know that mother and I missed you so much and were worried about you?" All of a sudden, a hissing sound came from behind him. There was also a stench that assailed his nostrils. The young man quivered and turned his head abruptly. He saw a pair of green eyes staring coldly at him from a dozen meters away. It was a poisonous python that was 10 meters long and as thick as a water bucket. Its entire body was covered with black scales. "This is bad." Unknowingly, I actually left the forbidden area. The young boy panicked but pretended to be calm. He waved his small fist and shouted, "My fist is very hard. You better not come over." The poisonous python spat out its tongue and stared at the young boy for a moment. Its long and narrow snake eyes flashed with a hint of disdain, and then it swam towards the young boy. "I'm telling you, if you come over again, I won't be polite to you." The young boy kept retreating. On the surface, he looked very fierce, but in fact, he was extremely terrified. Whoosh! Suddenly, that poisonous python increased its speed, opened its bloody mouth and revealed its sharp fangs as it pounced towards the young boy. It was the young boy's first time seeing such a huge poisonous python. He had no doubt that it could swallow him alive. But at this moment, he had already retreated to the edge of the cliff and had nowhere to go. "I'll fight it out with you." He gritted his teeth and took out a dagger from his arms. It was just an ordinary dagger and flew towards the poisonous python. The poisonous python was stunned. It obviously did not expect that the young boy would dare to resist. But then, its eyes shone with a fierce light as it spat out venom. The young boy was shocked. His body technique was very agile. Like an ape, he narrowly dodged, and then stabbed the poisonous python 7 inches. He succeeded. But the scales on the poisonous python's body were harder than he imagined. Accompanied by a clanging sound, sparks flew. The dagger only left a mark on the scales. And this move had also completely angered the poisonous python. The long snake tongue spat out, wrapped around the young boy's ankle and dragged him towards the bloody mouth. "No. I can't die. If I die, no one will take care of my mother," the young boy roared. The strong desire to survive overcame the fear in his heart. He firmly grasped the dagger and stabbed it into the poisonous python's tongue. Blood instantly splashed. The poisonous python hissed in pain and released its tongue. The young boy finally escaped and was about to flee. But the furious poisonous python raised its enormous tail and slapped the young boy's back. "Ah!" A blood-curdling scream resounded through the sky. The young boy was like a meteor that flew out from the edge of the cliff and fell downwards. This short mountain was only a few dozen zhang high. For Xiuzha, it was nothing. But for normal people, falling down was fatal. "Mother! Sister! I don't want to," the young boy roared in despair. But he did not notice. The poisonous python also did not notice. At this time in the void above, Two streaks of light broke through the air. It was a male and a female. The male was about 23 or 24 years old. His figure was tall. His clothes were as white as snow. His facial features were sharp and clear. His long hair fluttered in the wind, giving off an otherworldly aura. The female had an exquisite figure. Her hair was like a waterfall. Her facial features were extremely beautiful. She was also wearing a snow-white long dress. She was like a fairy from the heavens, graceful and graceful. The two were Qin Feiyang and Lu Hong. And, who's calling? Suddenly, Lu Hong was stunned. She stopped and looked down. She immediately saw the young boy in despair. There was someone in the wilderness? And it was a child? Whoosh! The next moment, Lu Hong turned into a stream of light and rushed towards the young boy. The young boy was also in complete despair. He closed his eyes and quietly waited for death. But just as he was about to fall to the ground, he suddenly felt someone grab his arm. His body suddenly became light. The next moment he was suspended in the void. And the young boy was stunned. He turned his head and saw a beautiful sister in white standing beside him. He instinctively asked, "Are you an angel?" "Angel?" Lu Hong was slightly stunned. She shook her head and smiled. She landed on the ground with the young boy. Qin Feiyang also swooped down and landed beside the two. "You can actually fly?" Seeing this scene, the young boy's eyes almost popped out. He stuttered and asked, "Are you an immortal?" "Immortal?" This time, Qin Feiyang was also stunned. Chapter 12:11. Hiss. At this moment, the poisonous python chased after them. When it saw Qin Feiyang and Lu Hong, its eyes suddenly flashed with a shocking cold light. There was a hint of threat in its eyes. Lu Hong looked at the poisonous python and couldn't help but be stunned. She laughed and said, "You've just been enlightened. How dare you threaten us?" The poisonous python only had the cultivation of a martial master. A martial master level beast was very strong for a teenager without cultivation. It was like a god. But in the eyes of the two battle saints, Qin Feiyang and Lu Hong, it was naturally vulnerable. The poisonous python looked at the two of them and flicked its tongue. "Why aren't you leaving?" Lu Hong's eyes were cold as she released a wisp of holy power. The holy power was undoubtedly comparable to the power of heaven for a fierce beast like the poisonous python. It was paralyzed on the spot, and didn't even have the strength to leave. Its eyes were full of fear. Lu Hong shook her head with a smile and retracted her holy power. Only then did the poisonous python breathe a sigh of relief. It was already sweating all over, and then it fled into the mountains without looking back. So powerful. The teenager looked at Lu Hong with admiration. If he had such an ability, he wouldn't have almost lost his life. Lu Hong asked with a smile, "Tell me, what are you doing here alone?" Hearing this, the teenager's face suddenly fell. He said, "I'm looking for my sister." "What's the matter?" Lu Hong asked. The teenager lowered his head and said, "Half a month ago, my sister suddenly disappeared and hasn't returned home yet. I was really worried, so I went into the mountains to look for her." Lu Hong asked, "Do you have any clues now?" The teenager shook his head and said, "The villagers said that my sister must have died under the claws of a beast, and asked me not to look for her. But I don't believe it." "The village?" Lu Hong was slightly stunned and asked, "Where is your village?" The teenager pointed to the mountains in the north and said, "The village is over there, more than 10 miles away from here." More than 10 miles. Qin Feiyang and Lu Hong looked at each other, their eyes full of disbelief. For an ordinary person, a distance of more than 10 miles was not a normal distance. Qin Feiyang asked, "How did you get here? Did you encounter any ferocious beasts along the way?" "Vicious beast?" The young man was slightly stunned. He shook his head and said, "There are no ferocious beasts within a dozen miles of our village. There are only some ordinary wild beasts. We rely on hunting for a living." "No berserk beasts?" Qin Feiyang was stunned. On the way from the imperial city, they had encountered many ferocious beasts. There were even sacred beasts and emperor beasts. But how could there not be any here? Lu Hong said, "Little brother, let me ask you, do you know about the Sea of Reincarnation?" The youth shook his head and said, I've never heard of the sea of reincarnation, but I heard from the elders in the village that there's a sea far away from our village. Which direction? Lu Hong asked. North. The young man said. How far? Lu Hong asked again. The young man thought for a moment and said, It seems to be more than 100 miles away. North. More than 100 miles. Lu Hong thought for a while and looked at Qin Feiyang. She transmitted her voice. I think the sea he mentioned might be the sea of reincarnation. Why don't we send him back first and continue our journey? Qin Feiyang nodded. The young man's village was also in the north. It was on the way. Lu Hong looked at the young man and said with a smile, Little brother, it's already dark. Why don't we send you back first and you can continue to search tomorrow? No. I won't go back until I find my sister. The young man said stubbornly. Qin Feiyang frowned. If what the young man said was true and his sister had been missing for half a month, then she must have met with a mishap. But the young man was still young, so it was not appropriate to say these words directly. Putong. Suddenly, the young man knelt on the ground and looked at the two of them and pleaded, Sister Angel, Brother Immortal, can you help me find my sister? I beg you. This, Lu Hong couldn't make up her mind and looked at Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang frowned. To be honest, he really didn't want to meddle in other people's business. I'll kowtow to you. As long as I can find my sister, I'm willing to do anything. The young man begged again and again, his face full of anxiety and worry. Qin Feiyang said, Then tell me first, how did your sister go missing? The young man said, Half a month ago, my sister went out to hunt as usual, but she never came home. Hunting? Why is it your sister hunting? Where are your parents? Qin Feiyang frowned. The young man said, My father passed away a long time ago. My mother has been sick all year round and is weak. She doesn't have the ability to hunt, so all these years my sister has been taking care of me and my mother. So pitiful. Lu Hong sighed and asked with a smile, How old is your sister? Is she a warrior? The young man said, Sister is 18 years old, not a warrior. 18 years old, not a warrior, but supporting a family. Amazing. Lu Hong was full of hope. She looked at Qin Feiyang and said, Why don't we help him find her? Maybe his sister just met with an accident and didn't die. Yes, that must be the case. Brother Immortal, please help me, okay? If you can help me find my sister, I will treat you to a drink. The young man said. Drink. Qin Feiyang shook his head and laughed. Did he look like someone who lacked alcohol? But judging from the young man's family background, that was probably all he could afford. After pondering for a while, Qin Feiyang nodded and said with a smile, Okay, for the sake of the wine, I'll help you find her. Thank you, Brother Immortal. The young man was overjoyed and grateful. Qin Feiyang shook his head and laughed, saying, Okay, get up. A man has gold under his knees. Don't kneel when you see someone, and don't call me Brother Immortal. I'm not an immortal. Then who are you? The young man got up and looked at him suspiciously. Who am I? Qin Feiyang was stunned. He didn't expect the young man to ask such a question. After thinking for a while, he said with a smile, I'm just an ordinary warrior. Ordinary martial artists can fly? But why did I hear that only immortals can fly in the sky? The young man was puzzled. Who told you that? Qin Feiyang frowned. The person who said this was simply pretending to be mysterious and misleading the young man. The young man said, Immortal Shen said so. Who is Immortal Shen? Lu Hong was suspicious. The young man said, Every 2 years, an old man comes to our village on a crane. People in our village call him Immortal Shen. Lu Hong asked, What does he do in your village? The young man was about to speak. Qin Feiyang said, You talk. I'll go around and look for him. By the way, what does your sister look like? My sister looks like. The young man thought for a while, took out a piece of yellowed paper from his arms, and then opened it. There were 4 people drawn on the paper. A middle-aged man, a middle-aged woman, and a young woman. The rest was the young man himself. The young man pointed to the young woman and said, She is my sister, Wang Jin. Obviously, the middle-aged man was the young man's father who had passed away. The middle-aged woman must be the young man's mother. Qin Feiyang looked down at the woman's portrait, and there was a trace of surprise in his eyes. Whether it was the woman's outline or charm, they were all very well drawn. Although she was only wearing a shabby linen dress, she looked beautiful and refined. You stay here with him. After remembering the woman's appearance, Qin Feiyang secretly told Lu Hong. Then he rushed into the sky and quickly disappeared in the night sky. Aren't we going to help? Seeing Qin Feiyang leave, the young man quickly looked at Lu Hong and asked, Your immortal brother is very powerful. He doesn't need our help. Come on, tell me, did you draw these portraits? Lu Hong asked. Yes. I don't have any hobbies, but I like to draw. It took me 2 days to draw this picture. Is it okay? The young man asked innocently. It's very good. Lu Hong nodded with a smile and asked, By the way, can you tell me about the immortal crane you mentioned just now? Okay. The young man nodded. Let's sit over there and talk slowly, Lu Hong said with a smile. Not far away, there was a bluestone. Lu Hong walked over with the young man and sat on the bluestone. The young man slowly said, At the same time. Qin Feiyang flew over a mountain ridge. While scanning below, he also released his perception and carefully sensed the breath and movement below. But suddenly, he stopped in the void and waved his hand. All the people and beasts in the castle appeared. You all heard what I said just now. Help me look for her, but don't be too flamboyant. It's better to hide your breath. After Qin Feiyang finished speaking, battle chi surged, and Wang Jin's virtual shadow condensed. After remembering Wang Jin's appearance, Fatso asked, How do we find her? Qin Feiyang thought for a moment and said, The young man said that Wang Jin went missing when she went out to hunt. We will look for her near the village, but we have to expand the scope and search within 100 miles. Understood. Everyone nodded and immediately turned into streaks of flowing light, dispersing in all directions and disappearing. But Lu Zheng didn't leave. She looked down at the mountains below, and her eyes flickered. Qin Feiyang said suspiciously, Why are you still standing here? Don't you think it's strange? Lu Zheng didn't answer but asked. What's strange? Qin Feiyang asked. This place is close to the Sea of Reincarnation, but why is there a village here? And why is there no beast within a dozen miles of the village? Lu Zheng said. What do you mean? Qin Feiyang frowned. Lu Zheng's eyes flashed and said, The young man's village isn't simple. Let's go and take a look. Qin Feiyang nodded. Whoosh. The two of them cut through the sky and headed north, not forgetting to look for Wang Jin along the way. A dozen miles of distance was too easy for the two of them. In less than 100 breaths, a village came into their sight. The two of them hid their breath and stood in the sky, scanning the village. There were more than 2,000 families in the village, occupying half a mile of land. Every house looked old. Although it wasn't late at night, it was hard to see anyone in the village. It was quiet. How is this possible? Lu Zheng scanned the village, disbelief written all over his face. This huge village was full of ordinary people. It's indeed strange. Qin Feiyang muttered. This place was only 100 miles away from the Sea of Reincarnation. It could be said that this place was extremely dangerous, but there was a group of ordinary people living here. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.